Chapter 276. The list of the first battle was soon released. A total of 200 practitioners would fight on 100 arenas in the field. The time was 30 minutes. When this list spread throughout the entire place, it instantly aroused countless discussions. The spectators that were seated with nearly 100,000 people started to analyze this list. No way. There don't seem to be many top geniuses in the list of the first battle. What's there to see? Open your eyes and look. Arena number 36, Lin Sun. Isn't he a top genius? It's really Lin Sun. This guy is a tough guy. Damn. I didn't expect to see Lin Sun fight in the first battle. I don't know if he is really as powerful as the rumor says. Ha ha ha, which family does Tan Long belong to? It's really unlucky for him to meet such a tyrannical figure as Lin Sun in the first battle. There was a constant uproar in the field. After analysis, everyone agreed that the upcoming battle on Arena 36 was the most worthwhile to watch. There was no other way. There were 100 arenas in the field that were about to start at the same time. No one could watch all 100 battles, so they could only choose the most interesting ones to watch. Obviously, the appearance of Lin Sun in the first battle was undoubtedly the most worth looking forward to. Almost all the audience in the field knew that Lin Sun had beaten Qi Yunxiao and Yuan Shu, and they also knew the peak duel between him and Huang Jianchen, a young man from the Forbidden City. In their hearts, Lin Sun had long been a dazzling figure with fierce fighting power. Now they could see Lin Sun's performance in the first battle. How could they not be excited? For a while, the whole field seemed to be echoing Lin Sun's name. Standing in the auditorium, Gu Liang couldn't help feeling shocked when he saw this scene. Back then, Lin Sun was just a small role in Donglin Town. Who could imagine that he had become a dazzling figure in Mist City now? On the White Jade platform, big shots such as Lu Wujuan, Wei Lingzhen and Du Dongtua couldn't help sighing with emotion when they heard the heated discussion in the field. It had been less than a year since Lin Sun appeared in Mist City. This young man had risen like a star and attracted the attention of thousands of people, which was simply a miracle. When they thought of what had happened to Lin Sun, these big shots had to admit that Lin Sun did have the capital to be proud of. A fight on a rainy night caused more than a dozen powerful forces to suffer heavy losses, but they dared not speak out. A peak duel defeated Huang Jianchen, a young man from the Forbidden City, and he had to leave in dismay. Now, he participated in this province test again. No one could be sure what result he would get in the end. But there was no doubt that it would not be difficult for him to pass the province test based on his previous performance. Of course, before the final result was out, no one could be sure whether there would be any accident. At this time, even those practitioners who participated in the assessment focused their attention on Lin Sun. They had heard too many rumors about Lin Sun these days, and even many people had made a profound analysis of Lin Sun's fighting capacity. Of Lin. However, they heard that Lin, they of the battle of Lin. Tan Long felt a little dazed. Damn it, how unlucky am I to be sent out in the first match. How unlucky it was for him to meet Lin Sun, the evil star. There were so many participating Xiozha, why did they choose him? The heavens are so unfair. When he walked onto the 36th combat ring, Tan Long was able to clearly feel that the countless gazes in the surroundings were like sharp blades that locked onto him in unison, and it was as if they were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Tan Long felt uncomfortable all over. He took deep breaths and cheered himself up. It didn't matter. No matter how powerful Lin Sun was, he was still in the human gang realm like himself. What was there to be afraid of? Suddenly, Tan Long caught a glimpse of a familiar figure approaching the stage from the other side. He couldn't help being startled and said, "Brother, what are you doing? My opponent is Lin Sun, not you." That figure was Lin Sun. When he saw Tan Long, he couldn't help but be stunned. Wasn't this the little fatty who said he had a green face and fangs? Immediately, Lin Sun smiled and walked onto the combat ring. He said with a smile, "Your name is Tanlong, right?" Tanlong suddenly felt a little scared. He had a bad premonition. He swallowed hard and nodded. He couldn't help but say, "Brother, you can't be." Before Tanlong finished, Lin Sun nodded and said, "Yes, I am Lin Sun." Tanlong took a deep breath. His heart was cold. It was really him. When Tanlong thought of the first time they met, he called Lin Sun a devil from hell in front of him, and he felt dizzy for a while. What the f***ck? God, you must be kidding me. Well, brother Lin Sun, I didn't mean it before. I heard it from others. I didn't mean to scold you, Tanlong said with a bitter face. Before the match began, he was already a little scared. I understand. It's okay. I don't blame you. You can fight with me later, Lin Sun said with a smile, looking quite generous. Can I give up? Tanlong's face wrinkled and he said bitterly. He really didn't have much fighting spirit in the face of Lin Sun. It was not that he was timid, but he knew very well that the gap between him and Lin Sun was too big. Even if he went all out, it was no different from hitting a stone with an egg. Rather than being beaten up and making a fool of himself, it was better to just admit defeat. This way, he would be able to retain some face. Lin Sun was stunned. He didn't expect the little fatty to be so timid. He couldn't help saying, "Don't you want to fight? Maybe a miracle will happen." Tanlong shook his head repeatedly. "I never believe in miracles." Lin Sun was completely speechless and said angrily, "Impossible. You have to fight even if you don't want to. Even if you give up, it's up to me." Tanlong suddenly felt like being struck by lightning. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Lin Sun was so overbearing that he didn't even allow him to give up. How could he bully others like this? The discussion and expressions of the two were seen by many in the audience, and they couldn't help but be speechless. They despised Tanlong endlessly. They had seen cowards, but they had never seen such a coward. He admitted defeat before the battle even started. It was simply shameful. However, it could also be seen from this scene how fierce Lin Sun was. Before the fight began, his opponent was so scared that he wanted to take the initiative to admit defeat. Clang, the bell rang between heaven and earth, opening the curtain of the first fight. On the 36th platform, with a clang, Lin Sun pulled out a huge broadsword with a wide mouth. It was shining with cold light and fierce light. It was like holding a door plank, giving a strong visual impact. What kind of broadsword is this? What an exaggerated shape. I don't know. It should be a newly developed spiritual weapon, right? All of a sudden, the eyes of the people in the field were attracted by the huge broadsword in Lin Sun's hand. The size of this broadsword was too amazing. The blade was 4 feet long, dark, and full of dazzling cold light. It could be imagined how lethal it was. Tanlong shivered all over and wailed in his heart. Damn it, it was inevitable that he would be beaten by Lin Sun this time. But when it came to the critical moment, he made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and took out a pair of brass sledgehammers. Then he took a deep breath, ran all his strength, and stared at Lin Sun. It seemed that he was ready to fight desperately. "Lin Sun, give me a good time. Let's decide the winner with one move, shall we?" Tanlong shouted. "Okay, as you wish." Lin Sun readily agreed. "Kill!" Before he finished speaking, Tanlong's figure suddenly dashed forward, leaving an afterimage in the void. His chubby body was actually extremely agile. Boom, his whole body was overflowing with red light, and his whole body was like a burning volcano. At the moment of his attack, his momentum suddenly soared, with a kind of wanton and terrifying momentum. All the audience in the field were shocked. What a strong momentum this fat man had. How could he look like a coward? Obviously, this guy just pretended to be a coward. Many people secretly scolded Tanlong for being despicable and insidious. Although his momentum could not be compared with those top figures, it could also be regarded as first class. Just now, he was crying for his parents' death. Wasn't he pretending to be a coward? Oh, this little fat man is interesting. On the white jade platform, Wei Lingzhen was speechless, and other big shots also laughed. With their eyesight, they could naturally see that Tan Long had played some trick. The reason why he acted so cowardly just now was obviously to numb Lin Sun. But this was also normal. Those who could pass through layers of selection and participate in the province test couldn't be ordinary at all. If Tan Long was really a big coward, how could he participate in the province test? Boom! 2 brass sledgehammers rose into the air, like a pair of frightening dragons entangling with each other, squeezing and collapsing the air, producing terrible destructive power. At this moment, Tan Long had obviously used all his strength in the face of Lin Sun, who had long been notorious. All the audience in the field couldn't help but feel nervous with their eyes wide open. In the face of such a swift and violent blow, how should Lin Sun deal with it? Would he be caught unprepared because of his carelessness? Lin Sun smiled and stood still until Tan Long's attack came from the air. Then he turned his wrist and raised the exaggerated broadsword in his hand. It was as if he had swung a door. Boom! After an earth-shaking bang, Tan Long's whole body was swatted out like a fat fly. In an instant, everyone was dumbfounded. This is too cruel, isn't it? Chapter 277. Bang! Tan Long flew out uncontrollably and fell hard on the ground outside the arena. He looked shocked and couldn't believe that Lin Sun had defeated him with one strike. Damn it, this guy was as abnormal as the rumor said. At this time, there was a sound of gasping in the audience. They were shocked by this scene. Originally, they thought that Tan Long deliberately pretended to be a coward. In fact, his fighting capacity was so great that he could have a fierce competition with Lin Sun. Who would have thought that Lin Sun just swatted Tan Long away with one strike, which was even easier than swatting a fly. It ended way 2F** king fast. Many people were still a little confused. They couldn't believe that the anticipated duel ended like this. On the white jade platform, Wei Lingzhen and Du Dongtu looked at each other and couldn't help showing a wry smile. Lin Sun was really cruel. Governor Lu Wujuan narrowed his eyes and didn't say much. Tan Long's defeat was indeed unexpected, but combined with the fighting capacity shown by Lin Sun in the past, it was reasonable for him to achieve this step. Damn it, this guy is really a devil. I know Tan Long. He is also a first-class figure in the human gang realm, but he was defeated in one move. You can imagine how powerful Lin Sun is. Those practitioners who had not yet fought on the arena could not calm down at this moment. Although the battle ended quickly and they didn't get a glimpse of Lin Sun's real fighting capacity, it could be seen from his absolute crushing power that ordinary first-class figures could not be Lin Sun's opponent at all. Perhaps, to suppress Lin Sun, at least the top figures above the Earth Gang realm must be dispatched. The audience was silent, and all eyes were fixed on Lin Sun standing on the arena. They looked strange and their mood fluctuated. At this moment, no one seemed to pay attention to the battles taking place on the other 99 arenas. In this silence, Lin Sun suddenly straightened his body. His eyebrows were as sharp as a knife, and his eyes were like lightning, showing a spirit of looking down on the mountains and rivers. What was he going to do? Many people narrowed their eyes. Lin Sun casually picked up the huge broadsword in his hand and put it in front of him. The blade was dark and full of cold light, making a long and clear sound. Lin Sun glanced at the audience and concentrated his chi in his dantian. He said in a low voice, "Oh, I'm sorry to make you laugh at me. In fact, I won the battle easily because of this saber in my hand." Everyone was stunned. What the hell was this? "Child Lin, where did you buy this saber?" Suddenly, someone shouted loudly. Lin Sun said with a smile, "A saber will last forever. This saber was forged by a spiritual tattoo master of Golden Hall. It can be called a magic weapon in the middle grade of human rank. I like it very much. In the future, I will only choose Golden Hall when I buy spiritual weapons." "Golden Hall?" the man shouted. "Yes, Golden Hall. Lin Sun affirmed seriously. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd burst into an uproar. Everyone's expression was extremely interesting. Damn, this is a publicity for Golden Hall. Someone suddenly understood. What the hell is Golden Hall? How could it invite Lin Sun to promote it in person? It's 2F** ket up. Someone exclaimed. Bah! Shameful. This is the province test, which is watched by the whole empire. Lin Sun is obsessed with money and promotes irrelevant things on such an occasion. What does he take this province test for? Does he still have dignity and integrity as a practitioner in his heart? Some people were indignant. Why did my idol become like this? His lofty image in my heart has collapsed. My heart hurts so much. Many girls made a sad voice, thinking that Lin Sun's action was too disrespectful and disappointing. Many people also pointed the spear at Golden Hall, thinking that this business was simply blinded by lard and dared to think about the province test, which was simply a blasphemy to this grand event. When Mingxiu, Qi Yunxiao and other practitioners who participated in the assessment were also stunned. Was Lin Sun so poor that he couldn't even eat? How could he do such a disgraceful thing? With his current reputation and strength, was it not easy for him to make money? Some people speculated that Golden Hall must have a close relationship with Lin Sun, otherwise Lin Sun would not do such a disgraceful thing. This speculation was quickly recognized by many people. If Golden Hall really had an inseparable relationship with Lin Sun, then all this made sense. On the white jade platform, Governor Lu Wujuan's face darkened, and a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. Lin Sun was too mischievous. Suddenly, Wei Lingzhen's chuckle came from the side. I'm curious. Who is the boss of Golden Hall? How could he invite Lin Sun to support him? This can't be done by any chamber of commerce. Lu Wujuan's heart moved, and he heard Du Dongtu on the other side said, It's true. Lin Sun has recently become famous in Mist City. If he only wants to make money, he would never do such a disgraceful thing. It suddenly occurred to Lu Wujuan that Lin Sun was not just an outstanding human gang realm practitioner. Behind him, there was also a monster that could make more than a dozen powerful forces fear, and even Huang Jianchen, a young man of the aristocratic family, could only swallow his anger. How could a person like Lin Sun help a chamber of commerce to publicize for no reason? Lu Wujuan suddenly remembered that in the last centennial celebration of Keystone Business specially arranged a chief seat for Lin Sun, who was right next to him. It was not easy. If he really pursued Lin Sun in this province test, it seemed it was really inappropriate. Lu Wujuan frowned and finally held back a trace of unhappiness in his heart. He decided to watch from the sidelines. After the province test, he would check the details of Golden Hall in detail. There was an uproar in the field. At this moment, everyone seemed to forget that the province test was still in progress. All of them were attracted by Lin Sun's unexpected action. Lin Sun had already walked down from the arena. Along the way, he heard all kinds of voices of praise and criticism. He couldn't help but smile in his heart. No matter what, judging from the noise this time, the name of Golden Hall could be spread all over Mist City in less than a day. After leaving the examination site, Lin Sun directly left Mist College. The battle with Tan Long just now had allowed him to successfully pass the first round of assessment. He only needed to wait for the second round of assessment 3 days later. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun naturally would not stay here any longer. It was not that he was not interested in the next battles, but that no matter where he went, he would be noticed by countless strange eyes and heard all kinds of comments. This made Lin Sun feel uncomfortable all over. He could only choose to leave and temporarily avoid the limelight. When he walked out of the gate of Mist College, there was still a sea of people waiting to watch the fun everywhere. They were not qualified to enter the site, but it didn't mean that they couldn't watch the fun. For example, as soon as Lin Sun's battle ended, the news had been spread here as soon as possible, causing a great sensation. What? Lin Sun is so weird that he would not hesitate to damage his own reputation in order to help a chamber of commerce to publicize? God, Golden Hall is really capable. This time, with Lin Sun's publicity, it's hard for it not to be popular. Although Lin Sun's fighting capacity is powerful, his conduct is questionable. I've decided not to regard him as an idol from now on. Look at your ugly appearance. If I were Lin Sun, I would wish you to make such a wise decision as soon as possible. The heated discussion spread from mouth to mouth, making the news that Lin Sun helped Golden Hall to publicize spread at an incredible speed like a wildfire. Lin Sun was speechless again. Fortunately, few people on the scene recognized him, so he left this troublesome place without any mishap. However, through this scene, Lin Sun knew that the name of Golden Hall would be spread all over Mist City before tomorrow. Instead of returning home, Lin Sun planned to go to Golden Hall to have a look. Unexpectedly, as soon as he arrived, he saw that the door of Golden Hall had already been crowded with dense figures, so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Most of them were practitioners who had just heard the news of the province test, and came to see what was the background of Golden Hall. There were also many people who were filled with righteous indignation and came aggressively to accuse and scold Golden Hall. They thought that Golden Hall's move had ruined the reputation of the province test and insulted Lin Sun's image in their hearts. Looking at Golden Hall again, Gu Liang had already rushed back and was dispatching attendants to help maintain order, sweating profusely. Golden Hall was going to be popular. Lin Sun made an intuitive judgment in his heart. Whether the reputation was good or not, at least the name of Golden Hall had been publicized and known by people, not as unknown as before. As long as the reputation spread, there was no need to worry about the flow of customers. As long as Gu Liang managed it properly, he could take this opportunity to expand Golden Hall quickly. Of course, Lin Sun also knew that the rise of Golden Hall would inevitably arouse the vigilance and suppression of other chambers of commerce in the city. But this kind of business affairs could be handled by Gu Liang himself. If Gu Liang couldn't even handle this kind of thing well, it would be better to close Golden Hall as soon as possible. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun turned to the commune of spiritual tattooists and talked to Chu Feng about this matter. He asked Chu Feng to send some people to Golden Hall to help maintain order. In these days, Golden Hall would definitely fall into the vortex of public opinion and become a place of public concern. It was impossible for Gu Liang to maintain order with his current strength. If some people with bad intentions took the opportunity to make trouble, the consequences would be unpredictable. Chu Feng had already heard about this matter. He agreed without hesitation and immediately sent a large number of guards to Golden Hall. After this, Lin Sun didn't stay long and left in a hurry. But as soon as he walked out of the gate of the commune of spiritual tattooists, he was stunned because a familiar figure appeared in his sight. Chapter 278. Wearing a black dress, the woman's soft black hair was tied up in a bun, revealing a charming and beautiful face, and her skin was as smooth and white as cream. She had a graceful figure with the style of a mature woman. Standing there casually, she attracted the attention of countless passers-by. Mu Wansu. Lin Sun recognized her at a glance. This Black Rose from Donglin Town was now the shopkeeper of Keystone business in Mist City. Her status and power were not the same as before, and Lin Sun himself was no longer the weak boy who had just entered Feiyun village. Seeing Mu Wansu again after nearly 2 years, Lin Sun couldn't help but think of the past and sighed with emotion. At this time, Mu Wansu also saw Lin Sun coming out of the commune of spiritual tattooists. She raised the corner of her mouth and waved her hand with a faint smile. Lin Sun stepped forward and said with a smile, "What a coincidence! I didn't expect to meet Sister Wansu here." "It's not a coincidence. I'm here to see you." As soon as she saw the warm and bright smile on Lin Sun's face, Mu Wansu's mood became subtle. If she didn't know this little bastard, she would be deceived by his harmless appearance. You want to see me? Lin Sun was surprised. Mu Wansu nodded and said, How about taking a walk with me? Lin Sun thought for a while and said naturally, Which man can refuse the invitation of such a beauty like you, Sister Wansu? Mu Wansu glared at him. I haven't seen you for a long time. Your mouth is getting smoother and smoother. As she said, she turned around and walked along the street at will. Why didn't you come in person at the celebration of Keystone business last time? Lin Sun stepped forward and walked side by side with Mu Wansu. He said casually, I had something urgent to deal with at that time, so I couldn't get away. Mu Wansu nodded and didn't say anything more. Lin Sun said, What's wrong, sister? You're not here to denounce me, are you? Mu Wansu snorted, I'm not in the mood to be angry with you. I'm here to ask you what's the relationship between you and Golden Hall. Lin Sun was surprised. Sister, you also heard about it? Mu Wansu said angrily, I not only heard about it, but also saw your performance in the province test. I just want to know that even if you are short of money, you should choose to cooperate with Keystone business. With your attainments in spiritual tattoos and the strong financial resources of Keystone business, you can enjoy endless glory and wealth. Why do you do that kind of thing that damages your reputation? Mu Wansu looked at Lin Sun thoughtfully and said, Of course, since you're doing this, you won't just do it for money. Am I right? Looking at her charming and beautiful face, Lin Sun praised sincerely, Sister, you really have a keen eye and foresight. Mu Wansu snapped, Don't talk nonsense. Because of the relationship between eldest young Master Shi Xuan and third young Master Shi Yu, I don't treat you as an outsider anymore. If you continue to make jokes, it will seem too insincere. Lin Sun suddenly became serious and said, Sister, you're right. I'll keep it in mind. He muttered, The boss of Golden Hall has saved my life. We're already close friends. Golden Hall has not yet become famous in Mist City. As a friend, I naturally have to help. Mu Wansu also knew the background of Golden Hall because the first Golden Hall shop opened by Gu Yenping was in Donglin Town. She knew it too well. It was because of this that she felt strange. The background of Golden Hall was not powerful at all. It was even far inferior to the ordinary forces in Mist City. It seemed that such a small force that had just risen could not ask Lin Sun for help at all. Fortunately, Lin Sun's explanation at this time dispelled many doubts in her heart. I didn't know that you are a person who values friendship and righteousness. Mu Wansu chuckled, not ironically, but a little surprised. It seemed that she didn't expect that a little bastard like Lin Sun was also a person who valued friendship and righteousness. Lin Sun replied with a smile, When you know more about me, you will find that I have more advantages. Mu Wansu said, I didn't see any advantages, but you are more shameless than before. Lin Sun shrugged his shoulders helplessly. Mu Wansu tucked her hair behind her ears and suddenly said, I originally planned to pull you into Keystone business and give you the identity of a special spiritual tattooist. But now it seems that it's impossible. Lin Sun suddenly realized that this was the real purpose of Mu Wansu looking for him. He didn't say anything, but his silence had already shown his attitude. Well, we can cooperate again when there is a chance in the future. Mu Wansu seemed to have made a decision and looked very decisive. Lin Sun nodded with a smile. By the way, Mu Wansu suddenly said, Golden Hall doesn't have a deep foundation, and now it's making a lot of noise in Mist City. You should remind your friend that Golden Hall's reputation is just a reputation. Whether Golden Hall can really gain a foothold in Mist City depends on its own strength. Without enough foundation, it's impossible to compete with other established businesses in the city. She said with fervor and assurance, The business world is like a battlefield. No matter how famous Golden Hall is, if it has a weak foundation, it will be eliminated by itself without the suppression of other forces. For example, there are hundreds of businesses in the city, big or small, selling everything. If Golden Hall doesn't have unique products, how can it compete with other businesses? What you have, others have, and it's likely to be cheaper than yours. Even if there is a price war, how can Golden Hall compete with those strong businesses with a shallow foundation? In the final analysis, Golden Hall has solved the problem of reputation. The first thing to do next is to develop its own unique products, so that it can avoid competition with other businesses. Unconsciously, Mu Wansu said a lot. Her voice was calm and her words were meticulous, just like a strong woman who was devising strategies, elegant and charming. In the end, she suddenly realized something and showed a touch of happiness on her face. Since I entered Mist City, there are few friends around me who I can talk to. I didn't expect to meet you this time, so I talked too much unconsciously. Lin Sun said with a smile, "What you said is all insightful and insightful. This is a rare and valuable business experience. I can't wait to hear more." At this moment, Mu Wansu suddenly found that Lin Sun's smile didn't seem to be as annoying as before. It was late at night when Lin Sun said goodbye to Mu Wansu. The province test was still in full swing, day and night. As the test went on, more and more news came out, causing a sensation in Mist City, which was very noisy and lively at night. Those Xiuzhe who won naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. Those who failed in the first round were also paid attention to by the forces and families from different places in Southwest Province. Those who failed would become the first batch of recruitment targets. Everyone knew that this kind of failure was just a failure in the province test, which could not completely negate the potential of a practitioner. On the contrary, these losers were all under the age of 18, with cultivation above human gang realm, and had the qualification to participate in the province test. They had surpassed their peers too much. If they could recruit the best of the young generation, it would be a profitable business for any force. Lin Sun didn't care about these. In other words, he only cared about whether he could pass the province test smoothly. Apart from that, there was really nothing worthy of his concern. At this time, sitting in a secret room of Golden Hall, he handed a stack of paper full of dense spiritual tattoos to Gu Liang. On these papers, there were the ideas of 7 new spiritual weapons, including the shape, materials, spiritual tattoos, and so on. The design ideas of each kind of spiritual weapon had never appeared in the market. As early as when he refined the flowing lightsaber, it had proved that Lin's attainments in spiritual tattoos had reached the point where he could independently design and refine new spiritual weapons. However, the ideas of the 7 new spiritual weapons he took out this time were not from his own creation, but from the animal skin notes of Master Lu. Although the animal skin notes had long disappeared with the appearance of the heaven accessing place, the contents of the notes had long been imprinted in Lin's mind. The conception of the 7 new spiritual weapons was Master Lu's idea. Look, I have listed the methods and steps of refining these 7 spiritual weapons in detail. You just need to find some spiritual tattooists to refine them. Lin Sun picked up the teacup and took a sip, looking relaxed. With a swish, Gu Liang grabbed the thick stack of paper and put it in front of his eyes to read it carefully. Before Lin Sun found him, he was also having a headache. Although Golden Hall became famous today, and its reputation spread all over Mist City, Gu Liang knew very well that there was still a thorny problem in Golden Hall at present. But Gu Liang knew best that there was still a thorny problem in Golden Hall at present, that was, there was no unique brand top-grade spiritual weapon of its own. If this problem could not be solved, Golden Hall would be suppressed by other businesses in the city sooner or later, no matter how famous it was. When Lin Sun came in a hurry and talked to Gu Liang about this, Gu Liang was overjoyed. It was no different from providing charcoal in snowy weather. Especially at this moment, when Lin Sun took out the ideas of 7 new spiritual weapons, Gu Liang felt as if he had been hit on the head by a pie from the sky. He was a little confused. He knew very well what a new spiritual weapon meant, which was no different from an exclusive secret recipe. It could be regarded as the biggest secret of the business. If this new spiritual weapon could meet the market demand after testing, then it was destined to become a resounding brand of Golden Hall and bring continuous long-term benefits to Golden Hall. And now, there wasn't just one type of brand new spiritual weapon conception, but a total of 7 kinds. Gu Liang was so excited at this moment that he wanted to dance with his hands and feet. His heart was beating so violently that it was about to jump out of his throat. Chapter 279. After taking a few deep breaths, Gu Liang suppressed the joy and excitement in his heart and said, "Lin Sun, you've helped me a lot this time. I don't know how to thank you." His words came from the bottom of his heart, and his true feelings were overflowing. Just a while ago, Lin Sun not only helped him solve a trouble from Azure Light Pavilion, but also gave him a batch of spiritual materials worth more than 100,000 gold coins. This money alone was enough to buy all the assets owned by Golden Hall today. Now, Lin Sun helped Golden Hall to publicize in the province test, and he also sent out 7 new conceptions of spiritual weapons, which was too much to pay. Gu Liang was very sure that these 7 new conception maps of spiritual weapons could definitely be exchanged for an unimaginable fortune for Lin Sun if they were taken to other trading firms. But now, Lin Sun gave them all to him without any hesitation. How could Gu Liang not be moved? Even if Lin Sun asked him to work for him at this moment, Gu Liang would not frown. Looking at Gu Liang's moved appearance, Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh and scold. "I also have a share in Golden Hall. I'm not helping you, but helping myself. If you really appreciate me, you can set up Golden Hall for me. Didn't you say that you would develop Golden Hall beyond the Empire? Don't be a coward." Gu Liang gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "Boy, just wait and see. One day, I'll let the whole world know the name of Golden Hall." Lin Sun said with a smile, "Then I'll wait and see." As he said, he pointed to the 7 new conception maps of spiritual weapons in Gu Liang's hand and said, "This thing is like a unique recipe. You must not let it leak out. Otherwise, if other trading firms know it in the future, you should know what the consequences will be." Speaking of business, Gu Liang's eyebrows flashed with confidence and he said, "Don't worry about this. My father has a set of special confidentiality means, and will never leak out a trace." At this point, he suddenly frowned. "What I'm most worried about is whether or not the 7 new spirit artifact blueprints you gave will be easily copied." Lin Sun immediately smiled. "I can tell you that there are many unique imprints in the refining process of these 7 spiritual weapons. You can trust other spiritual tattooists to refine them. They definitely can't crack the mystery unless what?" Gu Liang could not help but ask. Lin Sun said, "Unless they come to beg me to tell them the secret." His words were casual, but revealed his absolute confidence. This was a brand new spiritual weapon designed by Master Lu himself. If it could be copied so easily, Master Lu's capability would be underestimated. If Lin Sun hadn't known the secret, he wouldn't have succeeded if he tried to refine it in this way. Hearing this, Gu Liang laughed heartily. He was finally at ease. He had decided to invite his father, Gu Yinping, over from Donglin town tomorrow to make good preparations for this event. As long as it operated properly, the rise of Golden Hall was destined to be unstoppable. Having solved the problem of Golden Hall, Lin Sun felt much more relaxed. He had done what he should do, and the rest could only be solved by Gu Liang. It was already 10 o'clock in the morning when Lin Sun returned home. Shu Jin was sleeping in the corner as usual. The courtyard was very quiet under the clear starlight. Lin Sun didn't disturb Shu Jin and walked lightly to his room. Shu Jin suddenly turned over and opened his eyes, saying, "What happened today is not like your style." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "You also heard about it?" Shu Jin sat up and frowned, "Of course. The propaganda between you and Golden Hall has caused a lot of noise in Mist City. How can I not know about it? But I'm very confused. Are you sure about the possible consequences of this matter? Before Lin Sun opened his mouth, Shu Jin said in a deep voice, Boy, I have to remind you that your fame has gradually become more and more well-known and has begun to attract many people's attention. This is a good thing, but also a bad thing. At least those forces who have a grudge against you will never miss any opportunity to attack you. Although you are safe and sound in Mist City now, it doesn't mean that your enemies have completely given up the idea of attacking you. In this case, your relationship with Golden Hall will become your weakness. If your enemies want to attack you, they only need to attack Golden Hall, and you will be in a passive situation. Speaking of this, Shu Jin's expression had become serious. In the past years, there have been many similar things. Have you really thought about the consequences of this matter? Lin Sun fell into silence and said after a while, There is nothing without risk in this world. If Golden Hall wants to develop, it will be attacked by competitors sooner or later. I believe Guliang has long realized this. As for whether my existence will bring a bad influence to Golden Hall, this is also a helpless thing. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun continued, But no matter what, even if there are many risks, you still have to do it. If you don't have this kind of courage, what's the point of living if you are overcautious and worried about gains and losses every time you do something? Shu Jin's expression became complicated. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He suddenly found that he seemed to think too much and forgot that things in this world were always like this. There was no smooth sailing at all. What's more, if someone really dares to retaliate against me by attacking Golden Hall, don't blame me for retaliating at all costs. Lin Sun looked calm, but his voice was cold and ruthless. I don't believe that they have no family or friends behind them. The implication was that if anyone dared to retaliate against him by attacking Golden Hall, he wouldn't mind retaliating against their families and forces. Shu Jin understood the meaning of the words. Looking at Lin Sun's indifferent and calm expression, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He was sure that Lin Sun dared to do so, and once he retaliated, he would be more ruthless and terrifying. Alas, I'm too old to be compared with you young people. As the saying goes, the older you are, the more timid you are. Maybe your approach is also right. Shu Jin sighed. Lin Sun said, Old Jin, you're right. It's just that our views on things are somewhat different. Shu Jin waved his hand and said, Well, I'm talking too much. After I leave, you can do whatever you want. As long as you have the ability, you can even poke a hole in the sky. Lin Sun was silent for a moment. Then he smiled and turned into the room. Watching Lin Sun's back disappear, Shu Jin didn't continue to sleep. He suddenly found that he couldn't understand Lin Sun more and more. What kind of teenager was he? 3 days passed quickly. The first round of the province test came to an end yesterday. More than half of the 5,436 practitioners who participated in the test were eliminated. In the end, only 2,600 people successfully advanced. Originally, half of the participants should be eliminated in the one-on-one duel. However, due to the time limit in the assessment, some practitioners were eliminated within 30 minutes. Finally, both of them were eliminated. Every practitioner who could participate in the province test was the best in the younger generation. However, in the first round of assessment, more than half of them were eliminated. It could be imagined how cruel and abnormal the competition of the province test was. Of course, compared with the losers, the winners who successfully entered the second round of assessment were naturally paid more attention. Among them, the most eye-catching were naturally the top figures of the younger generation such as Xu Shaolin, Yuan Jing, Lu Jiao and Yun Zitong. Almost all of them had the cultivation above the Earthgang realm, and many of them were in the Heavengang realm. They shone in the first round of assessment, causing countless exclamations and sensations. Lin Sun was also one of them, but he seemed to be quite special. First, his cultivation was only at the level of Human Gang realm. Second, in the first round of assessment, his and Golden Hall's propaganda methods were actually mixed, which made people not know whether to laugh or cry. But in any case, the powerful strength shown by Lin Sun in the battle was beyond doubt. No one would deny this. Even compared with some other practitioners who participated in the assessment, Lin Sun's way of winning was more overbearing and the winning time was shorter. Merely a single slash was enough to send his opponent flying out of the ring. Just this alone was enough to make many people tremble in fear. Assessment Area of Mist College. The second round of assessment would be carried out today. More than 2,000 practitioners who passed the first round of assessment as smoothly as Lin Sun had gathered here. Even the seats around the venue were the same as 3 days ago, filled with densely packed figures. In fact, it was even more crowded than before. It was obvious that the second round of battle would be more intense than the first round. Naturally, it would attract more attention. When the figure of Lin Sun was seen, there was a sudden sensation in the field. Look, that guy is Lin Sun. I don't know if he will publicize Golden Hall again in the second round of assessment. Haha, this guy is really a weirdo. He is obviously not short of money, but he does such a thing that damages his reputation. I really don't know what he is thinking in his mind. I only know that this time Golden Hall is completely popular. Now in Miss City, no matter who, has not heard of the name of Golden Hall? All this is caused by Lin Sun. This alone can prove how successful the propaganda strategy of Lin Sun and Golden Hall is. I have to admire it. All kinds of comments sounded, with praise and criticism. As soon as Lin Sun arrived, he became the focus of attention of the whole audience. Seeing this, many practitioners who participated in the assessment couldn't help showing a strange expression. No matter what they thought, they had to admit that Lin Sun was definitely the most popular person in this assessment. Of course, not everyone wanted to be in the limelight with such mixed praise and criticism. On the White Jade platform, Governor Lu Wujuan, Wei Lingjun, Du Dongtu and others couldn't help but show subtle expressions when they saw this. Lin Sun was really an alien that couldn't be described by common sense. P.S. 1 update tonight and 4 updates tomorrow. I'm really busy today. Please forgive me for the time being. Goldfish here guarantees that this month's update will be more than 200,000 words. And it will break out frequently. If you can't do it, don't ask for a monthly ticket in the future. 2. My good friend Stranger Knight's new book, The Strongest Evildoer, is on the shelves. This book is very, very good. Goldfish patted her chest and guaranteed that the quality is excellent. I'm also following it. I hope you can subscribe to The Strongest Evildoer and give this guy a first order so that he can concentrate on breaking out. The first order of The Strongest Evildoer is in Zongheng. You can find it if you search it. Chapter 280. Being watched by the whole audience, Lin Sun was also a little uncomfortable. He smiled bitterly in his heart. It was really troublesome to be famous. Fortunately, it didn't take long for a melodious and clear bell to ring through the world, and the curtain of the second round of assessment began. There were a total of 2,600 practitioners participating in the second round of assessment. The assessment rules were the same as the first round. They also needed to choose their opponents by drawing lots, and then go to the arena to fight. Only the time was changed from 30 minutes to half an hour. This also meant that in this second round of assessment, if the winner could not be determined within half an hour, both sides would be eliminated. Lin Sun's opponent this time was Yu Zongtian, a very strange name to him. His fighting ring was number 49, and his order of appearance was the 4th. That was to say, Lin Sun would fight with 99 other practitioners on the arena in the 4th round. Soon, the first match began. 200 practitioners boarded 100 arenas and began to fight with their chosen opponent. For a while, the huge venue was filled with all kinds of cheers, shouts, and excited roars. The atmosphere was earth-shaking, and the atmosphere was hot. Lin Sun waited in the assessment area. He looked around and found that every practitioner he faced today was indeed the elite of the elite. Each of them was very extraordinary, and they staged fierce battles one after another. However, there were very few top figures worthy of attention. It was not that those practitioners' combat effectiveness was poor, but that Lin Sun's strength had already exceeded the ordinary level. Although the strength of these practitioners was good, they could not arouse Lin Sun's interest at all. Even so, Lin Sun still watched with relish. Different practitioners had completely different cultivation methods and fighting methods, and there were many things that could be used for reference and learning. Suddenly, a sneer came from a distance. No need to remind me. I know Lin Sun is very powerful, but do you think I, Yu Zhongtian, am a vegetarian? You are afraid of Lin Sun, but I am not. There was a hint of displeasure in the voice. Lin Sun looked over and saw a group of people admonishing and reminding a thin man not far away, but the thin man retorted unhappily. Judging by the voice just now, it was obvious that the thin man was Yu Zhongtian, Lin's opponent in the second round of assessment. This person was thin and tall, wearing a sapphire blue robe. His eyes shone brightly, and his aura was extremely fierce. He raised his chin slightly while a wisp of faintly discernible arrogance hung on his face, and every single move he made revealed a sense of superiority. Obviously, he was an extremely proud young man. Seeing Lin Sun looking at him, Yu Zhongtian raised a cold smile and looked at Lin Sun provocatively. When the practitioners around Yu Zhongtian saw Lin Sun paying attention to them, they couldn't help but show a trace of unnaturalness. They secretly complained that Yu Zhongtian didn't cover his mouth. They kindly reminded this guy to be careful of Lin Sun. Not only did this guy not appreciate it, but he also deliberately said it, lest Lin Sun didn't hear it. Wasn't this embarrassing them? What surprised Lin Sun was that among the practitioners around Yu Zhongtian, there were Wen Mingxiu, Qi Yunxiao, Yuan Shu and others. Seeing Lin Sun looking at them, Wen Mingxiu and others couldn't help but avert their eyes. It seemed that they were afraid of Lin Sun's misunderstanding. They also quietly distanced themselves from Yu Zhongtian. It seems that this guy should also be a student of Mist College. Lin Sun withdrew his gaze thoughtfully. For Yu Zhongtian's provocative look, Lin Sun directly ignored it. He was not so narrow-minded that he wouldn't get angry just because of a glance. Who would have thought that Lin Sun's reaction seemed to be a kind of fear and retreat in Yu Zhongtian's eyes? He chuckled and walked over with large strides. Lin Sun, now many people think that you are not to be trifled with, but I don't think so. Yu Zhongtian stopped 3 feet in front of Lin Sun, narrowed his eyes slightly, and glanced at Lin Sun with a haughty attitude for a while. This was a naked provocation. Seeing this, Yu Zhongtian's companions couldn't help but change their expressions slightly. They secretly scolded Yu Zhongtian for looking for trouble and being too arrogant. But they all knew that Yu Zhongtian had such a temper, and no one could do anything about it. As Lin Sun had speculated before, Yu Zhongtian did come from Mist College and was a celebrity. He was just over 16 years old this year, and he already had the cultivation of Earthgang realm. Although he was not as dazzling as the top figures such as Xu Shaolin, Yu Wenjing, Lu Jiao, and Yun Zitong, he could be called a stunning first-class figure. It was just that he was arrogant, talkative, and very unpleasant. He had caused a lot of trouble in Mist College. If it weren't for his excellent cultivation talent, he would have been expelled from the college long ago. At this time, seeing Yu Zhongtian, a thorn, not only did not listen to the warning, but also took the initiative to provoke Lin Sun, those practitioners from Mist College couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. Some people looked on coldly, holding the attitude of watching the fun. However, Lin Sun didn't look at Yu Zhongtian at all, and directly ignored the guy who took the initiative to provoke him. He felt that Yu Zhongtian was obviously a little abnormal. It was an insult to his intelligence to argue with him. But the more Lin Sun behaved like this, the more disdainful Yu Zhongtian was. He asked aggressively, "Do you want to know how I evaluate you?" "No." Lin Sun's answer was very simple. Yu Zhongtian's expression stagnated and he sneered. You are really arrogant. I admit that your combat effectiveness is indeed very strong, but your conduct is very unbearable. In order to make money, you do not hesitate to help a business to promote its reputation. You have ruined the integrity and character of our practitioners. This was more than impolite. It was no different from pointing at Lin Sun's nose and scolding him. Many people were dumbfounded. They all knew that Yu Zhongtian was arrogant, but they didn't expect him to be so arrogant. His opponent this time was Lin Sun. If he was beaten down by Lin Sun in the arena, how could the consequences not be serious? But this was not the end. Yu Zhongtian sneered again and again, with an arrogant attitude, and said, Of course, this is your personal clown behavior. As long as it doesn't hinder others, it's okay. But don't forget, this is the province test, and it will affect more than you. Lin Sun finally responded. He looked at Yu Zhongtian and interrupted, What on earth do you want to say? This guy was too noisy, just like a nasty fly. No matter how good-tempered he was, he couldn't stand it. Many practitioners nearby were shocked. They realized that Yu Zhongtian's unscrupulous attack had finally angered Lin Sun. This fellow is simply courting death. Does he think he can look down on Lin Sun because he is in the Earthgang realm? He is still too young and naive. Qi Yunxiao whispered. Even if he hated Lin Sun in his heart, he had to admit that Lin Sun was definitely a monster. All kinds of facts had already proved that whoever underestimated Lin Sun would suffer. It was ridiculous that Yu Zhongtian dared to provoke Lin Sun. There were many people who thought the same as Qi Yunxiao, such as Wen Mingxiu and Yuan Shu, who had experienced Lin Sun's means, knew very well how stupid Yu Zhongtian's behavior at this time was. But unexpectedly, in the face of Lin Sun's question, Yu Zhongtian said, It's very simple. I want to make a bet with you. Lin Sun frowned. What do you want to bet? Yu Zhongtian sneered. I bet that you can't knock me out of the arena as you did to Tan Long within one move. What kind of bet was this? Everyone was stunned and almost couldn't believe their ears. Yu Zhongtian was so arrogant just now. How could his bet be so ridiculous? Couldn't knock him out of the arena within one move? Was there such a strange bet in the world? If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that Yu Zhongtian was crazy. Not to mention Lin Sun, they would never agree to this shit bet. One move? Obviously, he was deliberately making things difficult for Lin Sun. Only an idiot would agree to such a thing so that he could stand firmly in an invincible position. In the eyes of many people, Yu Zhongtian might not be Lin Sun's opponent, but if he wanted to block Lin Sun's blow without being defeated, it was a piece of cake. Under such circumstances, Yu Zhongtian's proposal for a bet was absurd and completely unreasonable. Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned for a moment. He had thought that since this guy was so arrogant, he must have something to rely on. Who would have thought that everything just now was just an act? His real purpose was actually to carry out a ridiculous bet with him. Why are you afraid? 10 moves is fine. Of course, since it's a bet, there must be a prize. Let's bet 10,000 gold coins. Seeing that Lin Sun didn't speak, Yu Zhongtian became more and more complacent, and his face was full of disdain. Just when everyone thought Lin Sun would refuse, Lin Sun smiled and said, Well, I promise you. 10,000 gold coins, right? Prepare it for me. Yu Zhongtian's eyes lit up. Lin Sun actually agreed. Others thought that he was arrogant and provoked Lin Sun again and again, which was a stupid behavior, but only he knew that he did all this for this bet. No matter how arrogant Yu Zhongtian was, he was not a brainless fool. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have today's strength and reputation. He had already determined that if he fought with Lin Sun, the chance of winning was extremely small. In such a case, how to minimize the impact of failure was what Yu Zhongtian had to consider. The bet this time seemed shameless and absurd, but as long as Lin Sun agreed, Yu Zhongtian had full confidence to win this bet. In this way, even if he lost to Lin Sun in the second round of assessment, at least it would not be shameful. What's more, he had won Lin Sun in the bet. This was Yu Zhongtian's calculation. At this moment, seeing that Lin Sun finally agreed, he was very proud and excited. But Lin Sun's next words made his heart tremble. There's no need to change the bet to 10 moves. 1 move is enough. After Lin Sun said this, he turned and left the area. When Yu Zhongtian heard this, he should have been more excited and happy. But he didn't know why. When he saw Lin Sun's handsome figure go away, he had a bad feeling in his heart. Chapter 281. Yu Zhongtian was completely stunned, and his expression changed. At this time, a group of practitioners nearby also vaguely guessed Yu Zhongtian's mind, and they couldn't help but show a strange expression. Only then did they realize that Yu Zhongtian's arrogance just now was simply an act, and his real purpose was for this bet. What they never expected was that Lin Sun actually agreed to such an obvious scheme, which was too unexpected. Was Lin Sun really confident that he could knock Yu Zhongtian out of the arena in 1 move? Some practitioners who knew Yu Zhongtian couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Lin Sun might have absolute confidence in his combat effectiveness, but if he thought Yu Zhongtian was so easy to deal with, it would be a big mistake. Others didn't know, but they were very clear that Yu Zhongtian cultivated a unique secret method called cloud light movement technique. Once it was used, his figure would move erratically, like a flowing cloud shadow, like a flash of flying light, which was extremely magical. Especially when dodging attacks, it could play an incredible role. Under such circumstances, it was obviously impossible to knock Yu Zhongtian out of the arena in 1 move. Lin Sun was going to be defeated by Yu Zhongtian this time. This was the thought of many people. Some people secretly scolded Yu Zhongtian for being shameless. They didn't expect that such a wild and arrogant guy would have such insidious thoughts. At this time, people like Wen Mingxiu, Qi Yunxiao, and Yuan Shu couldn't help but wonder whether Lin Sun could beat Yu Zhongtian, who cultivated cloud light movement technique, in 1 move. The hope was very slim. Of course, they didn't think that Yu Zhongtian would be Lin Sun's opponent in the second round of assessment, but at least in the bet, Lin Sun had almost no chance of winning. As time went on, the battle in the field continued. It was brilliant and fierce, making the audience completely excited. Outside the field, someone leaked the bet between Lin Sun and Yu Zhongtian, and it immediately set off a lot of uproar. This bet is obviously a trap set by Yu Zhongtian, but Lin Sun actually agreed. I really don't know whether he is stupid or bold. Some people were puzzled. Beat Yu Zhongtian in 1 move? Are you kidding me? Lin Sun is obviously going to fall. Someone sneered. Lin Sun really likes to be in the limelight. In the first round of assessment, he made such a big noise because of his cooperation with Golden Hall. Now he wants to make a 1-move pact. Will he die if he doesn't show off? There were also people who were disdainful. In a word, after knowing the conditions of the bet, almost no one thought that Lin Sun could do it. Even Lu Wujuan, the governor sitting on the white jade platform, was speechless when he heard this. What was Lin Sun thinking? Wei Lingjun, Du Dongtu, and other big shots also looked at each other. It was the first time for them to hear such an absurd bet, but Lin Sun actually agreed. But at this time, Lin Sun looked very relaxed, watching the battle in the field leisurely, as if he was not affected by what had happened just now. When he decided to agree to bet with Yu Zhongtian, Lin Sun already knew that since Yu Zhongtian put forward such an absurd condition, he must have great confidence to avoid his attack in 1 move and win the bet. Otherwise, Yu Zhongtian would not have done this. However, Lin Sun was not worried about it. Since he dared to agree, he also had his own confidence and confidence. When the third batch of practitioners began to enter the field, all eyes looked in the same direction. That was the number 49 platform. It was Lin Sun and Yu Zhongtian who were about to fight on the platform. As for the 1-move pact, everyone wanted to see whether Lin Sun could do it in the end. After all, this bet was too absurd. No one could imagine where Lin Sun's confidence came from and how he dared to agree to it. On the platform, Yu Zhongtian smiled with a complacent look. He had strong confidence to win this bet. What a joke! Couldn't he resist Lin Sun's one move? Of course, when facing Lin Sun, Yu Zhongtian did not dare to be careless. The reason why he made this bet was that he knew he was not Lin Sun's opponent. In order to save some reputation, he made such a calculation. Now that Lin Sun had agreed, Yu Zhongtian would naturally not allow this opportunity to be missed. He was even ready to go all out. Lin Sun, if you regret now, it's not too late. Yu Zhongtian said leisurely. I should be the one asking you this question. Lin Sun smiled slightly. Haven't you ever thought that if you are defeated in this move, you will not only lose the bet, but also the whole assessment? At that time, you will only lose face, your reputation will be ruined, and you will become a joke. You will never be able to lift your head again. Yu Zhongtian's face changed slightly. It was not that he didn't think of this result, but that it was impossible. Then I'd like to see how you can knock me out of the platform in one move. Yu Zhongtian gritted his teeth, and a ruthless look flashed across his face. He took a deep breath and circulated his cultivation to the limit. In an instant, he seemed to have become a completely different person. His entire body was enveloped by a dazzling golden light, and a shapeless, imposing aura rumbled as it swept towards the surroundings, causing even the air to wail without end. Many people's eyes lit up. Perhaps Yu Zhongtian was not as famous as Lin Sun, but he was also a young talent of Earthgang realm and a stunning figure in Mist College. If he attacked with all his strength, how could Lin Sun eliminate him in one move, no matter how strong he was? However, Lin Sun stood still in the same place with his bare hands. He didn't show any emotional reaction. Only his whole body was surrounded by strands of dreamlike and translucent spiritual gang qi, which made him quite extraordinary. His entire body was like a rock that was immovable, causing others to be unable to fathom his depth. Clang! When the bell rang, everyone in the audience was refreshed. It was about to begin. Even on the white jade high platform, the eyes of all the big shots were unconsciously looking at the number 49 arena. One move would be over in the blink of an eye, and the winner of this bet would also be decided. No one wanted to miss such an exciting moment. Whoosh! Before the bell fell, Yu Zhongtian, who had been waiting for a long time, made a long roar and rose into the air. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, his figure moved in the void, turning into a series of afterimages. Each afterimage was almost no different from a real person. Because of his speed, it was difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Looking from a distance, it was as if dozens of Yu Zhongtian were fighting together, moving and shuttling on the arena like clouds and mist, flickering like light and shadow. The scene was mysterious and shocking. What kind of secret method was this? The whole audience was shocked, and many people exclaimed. They didn't expect that Yu Zhongtian had mastered such an incredible secret method. No wonder he dared to propose this bet. It turned out that he had been prepared for it. Under such circumstances, ordinary practitioners might not be able to tell which one was the real Yu Zhongtian, let alone knock him out of the platform in one move. It's really the cloud-moving skill. There were also some people who knew the details of Yu Zhongtian. When they saw this scene, they all showed a look of anticipation. They couldn't help but wonder what Lin Sun would do in the face of such a secret method. Ha ha ha, Lin Sun, come on and knock me out of the platform. Are you regretting it now? Ha 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 ha. On the platform, Yu Zhongtian laughed. His voice was full of sarcasm. He wanted to irritate Lin Sun and make him lose his judgment. Strangely, at this moment, Yu Zhongtian's eyes were closed, but his figure was like a ghost, like a streamer, like a cloud. When he shuttled on the platform, he left a series of afterimages. There was not even a trace of flaw at all. Those who knew the cloud-moving skill knew that this was the feature of this secret method. It replaced the eyes with the perception power of the practitioner's soul. Wherever the perception covered was the place where the figure moved, making it impossible for others to catch him. At this time, Lin Sun stood still, but a faint cold smile appeared on his lips. Suddenly, he made a move. His figure was still standing in the same place, but his hands were raised in a strange way. At the same time, the windstorm millstone, that had been accumulating power in his body for a long time, suddenly boiled to the extreme. The majestic ocean-like gang spirit poured into his arms and gathered on his palms along a unique way of running. At this moment, his palms seemed to turn into two scorching suns, dazzling and gorgeous, illuminating the whole venue. What was this? The audience fell into a dead silence. Many people's hearts palpitated and their eyes widened. What kind of power was this? Powerful people like Lu Wujuan, Wei Lingzhen, and Du Dongtu couldn't help but twitch their eyelids and change their faces slightly. With their eyesight, they could naturally see that Lin Sun seemed to be using an extremely terrible secret method. Boom! In a flash, Lin Sun clenched his fists and pushed them forward, like pushing a mountain, showing an irresistible momentum. It could be seen with the naked eye that the air on the platform seemed to be crushed fiercely, making a rumbling sound and stinging the eardrum. It was so terrible that the void seemed to collapse in all directions. Yu Zhongtian, who was laughing proudly, stopped abruptly. He smelled an extremely dangerous atmosphere. Without any hesitation, he ran the cloud-moving skill to the extreme. But at this time, he was shocked to find that every inch of the void on the platform seemed to turn into stormy waves, constantly impacting and oppressing him, making him like a small boat going against thousands of waves. He was constantly pushed back by the impact, his blood and qi tumbling all over his body, and he almost coughed up blood. What kind of secret method was this? Yu Zhongtian's scalp was numb, and he was shocked and angry. He flashed frequently, but found that Lin Sun's single blow had shrouded the whole platform and crushed him fiercely. No matter where he dodged, he would suffer the same terrible attack. Boom! Yu Zhongtian's figure staggered and was almost blasted out of the platform, which made many people's hearts beat fiercely and gasp. But in the end, Yu Zhongtian stabilized his figure, gritted his teeth and roared, and began to confront the crushing fist wind head-on. He had realized that dodging was useless. Only by confronting head-on might there be hope to not be defeated. Chapter 282. There were some things that you understood, but when you tried to do it, you would find how terrible the difficulties you would face were. Just like at this moment, Yu Zhongtian wanted to fight with Lin Sun with all his Earthgang realm cultivation and completely resist this blow. But he obviously underestimated the horror of Lin Sun's blow. In just a moment, Yu Zhongtian seemed to be oppressed by a holy mountain, and his bones made unbearable sounds. The impact was so terrible that his face was distorted, and every inch of his skin was about to explode. In the eyes of all the people present, at this time, Yu Zhongtian was like a leaf of duckweed going against the current, or like an overconfident ant trying to shake a big tree. He seemed extremely small, as if he would fall down at any time. Many people were shocked speechless. They couldn't imagine how Lin Sun's blow could be so terrible that a first-class Earthgang realm practitioner could hardly move forward. Boom! Finally, under everyone's gaze, Yu Zhongtian coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his body was suddenly lifted up. Fin! Jump! He closed his eyes. Then, with a plop, he fell on the ground more than 30 meters away from the arena. He twitched as if having an epileptic seizure, and was unable to get up again. The audience was shocked and silent. Their eyes were fixed on Yu Zhongtian, and they couldn't believe all this was true. Yu Zhongtian was really defeated and knocked out of the arena in one move. Who could believe this before? Gulp gulp, all the practitioners in the assessment area couldn't help but swallow their saliva at this moment. They were shocked by this scene and felt a chill in their hearts. It was too fierce. How on earth did Lin Sun do it? Even with the cultivation of Earthgang realm, Yu Zhongtian couldn't resist his blow at all. This was too abnormal. What he just used should be a top-level ancient secret method, otherwise it would be impossible to have such power. On the white jade platform, Lu Wujuan's eyes were cold, and his words were full of amazement. He seemed to be surprised by Lin Sun's performance. Other big shots were also in a bad mood. They had witnessed the battle between Lin Sun and Huang Jianchen, and they were amazed by Lin Sun's strength. But compared with that time, the power Lin Sun showed at this time was obviously more terrifying. This was not the power of a human gang realm teenager. Haha, Yu Zhongtian shot himself in the foot this time. Not only did he lose the bet, but he also lost the assessment. Finally, he lost 10,000 gold coins to Lin Sun. His reputation is ruined and his situation is miserable. Du Dongtu chuckled. This boy is wild and arrogant. This ordeal is not necessarily a bad thing for him. Fortunately, he is 16 years old. It doesn't matter if he comes back for the province test next year. Wei Lingzhen commented. As the dean of Mist College, he naturally knew Yu Zhongtian. In next to no time, the deathly silent atmosphere in the surroundings was broken, and countless clamorous noises resounded. Damn it, Lin Sun is too powerful. When he defeated Tan Long last time, he used a saber. This time, with his bare hands, he actually blew Yu Zhongtian away in one move. Alas, what's more abnormal is that Lin Sun is only in the human gang realm, but he can already defeat opponents of higher realms. Compared with him, those so-called geniuses are not worth mentioning at all. There's always someone stronger than you, and there's always someone stronger than you. Lin Sun's performance at the moment perfectly illustrates what a real genius is. In the midst of the discussion, Lin Sun walked down the platform and came to Yu Zhongtian, who was lying on the ground. He said, "You see, I warned you earlier, but you didn't listen. Now you are defeated. Who can you blame?" Yu Zhongtian's face was pale, and his eyes were full of unwillingness and anger after failure. Seeing that Lin Sun was still making sarcastic remarks to him at this moment, he was so angry that he trembled all over and said, You are too much." Lin Sun said with a smile, "Too much? You are wrong. This is called an eye for an eye. You know, I didn't provoke you today, but you took the initiative to provoke me. Do you really think I am broad-minded and won't care about this?" Yu Zhongtian's face changed. Only then did he realize that all this Lin Sun did was to retaliate against his previous provocation. This guy was too vengeful, wasn't he? He'd already won and become the center of attention, whereas Chen Shi's reputation had been completely swept to the ground, and he'd lost all face. He was already in such a miserable state, yet he was actually still thinking about taking revenge on Chen Shi. He was simply too petty. Don't be angry. You should be grateful that this is the province test. Otherwise, your end will not be so simple. Oh, by the way, remember to send me 10,000 gold coins after the assessment. Lin Sun smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Then he got up and returned to the assessment area. Watching Lin Sun's back leave, Yu Zhongtian's expression changed. Finally, he sighed, knowing that he had made a mistake this time. A ruthless person like Lin Sun was not someone he could calculate at all. The duel caused by a ridiculous bet came to an end with the blow of Lin Sun's mountain breaker. This was also the first time that 9 strikes for shaking heaven appeared in front of the world. It caused a great sensation in one fell swoop and attracted the attention of all the practitioners present. The audience's impression of Lin Sun changed again. In the past, they might have looked down on Lin Sun and Golden Hall's cooperation in publicity. But now, even if they despised it, they could only hide it in their hearts. This was power. When one proved his fighting power, it would affect the opinions of many people, which was one of the reasons why many practitioners were so persistent and crazy about power. When they returned to the assessment area, many practitioners' expressions changed. They looked at Lin Sun with more and more fear, as if they were staring at a scourge. This was also normal. After defeating Huang Jianchen, Lin soon became famous in Mist City overnight and became a dazzling young strongman. He was recognized as the most unwilling opponent in the province test. If this matter was a little exaggerated, through the first and second rounds of the province test, those practitioners had completely seen the terrible fighting power of Lin Sun. Under such circumstances, if anyone dared to look down on Lin Sun, he must be out of his mind. Even Xu Shaolin, Yu Wenjing, Lu Jiao and Yun Zitong, the top practitioners with Heaven Gang realm cultivation, began to pay attention to Lin Sun at this moment. So what if Lin Sun had the cultivation of Human Gang realm? As long as you looked at his performance in the battle, you would know that Lin Sun's strength could not be measured by the cultivation strength shown on the surface. Standing in the assessment area, Lin Sun didn't pay attention to the strange eyes cast on him. Instead, he was thinking about the details of the battle just now. This time, if he used RFS, he could also defeat his opponent in one fell swoop. But in that case, he would expose his trump card. But the 9 strikes of shaking heaven was different. Lin Sun's understanding of this secret method inherited from the fragments of the ancient seal of shaking heaven had just stepped into the initial glimpse stage and could only exert about 1/10 of its power. Therefore, even if it was exposed, it was difficult for practitioners who didn't understand the mystery of this method to judge the real power of this method. While thinking, Lin Sun looked at the arena in the field. This time, he didn't leave because the third round of assessment would begin immediately after the end of the second round of assessment. The third round of assessment was called 6 Warriors Fighting for the Ring. That was to say, every 6 practitioners would be divided into a group and go to the arena to fight. Among the 6 people, only the last one could enter the final round of assessment successfully. To put it simply, it was to let 6 practitioners ascend the ring together and engage in a free-for-all battle. The one who won in the end would be able to smoothly enter the next round of assessment. There was no time limit for the 6 warriors fighting for the ring, nor did it prohibit practitioners from fighting in group. There were no particularly cruel rules. But as long as you carefully thought about it, you would know that this 6 warriors fighting for the ring was really cruel. Anything could happen in the scuffle of 6 people. No matter how strong one's fighting capacity was, he had to guard against other practitioners ganging up to deal with him. Lin Sun had a feeling that when the 6 warriors fighting for the ring was carried out, the guys in his group would definitely get rid of him first. This was also helpless. His performance was so eye-catching that he was regarded as a scourge by others. Naturally, he would become the target of public criticism. As time went by, the second round of assessment finally came to an end when the night fell. In this assessment, a total of 1,400 people were eliminated, leaving only 1,200 people behind. The losers became the targets that the major forces scrambled to win over. The winners became the more eye-catching existence, and the third round of assessment was about to begin. It was worth mentioning that after the first 2 rounds of elimination, among the remaining 1,200 people, the number of Human Gang realm practitioners had decreased sharply, while the number of Earth Gang realm and Heaven Gang realm practitioners had hardly changed. Of course, if Yu Zhongtian hadn't met Lin Sun, he would have been able to enter the third round of assessment smoothly. In any case, the practitioners who could persist to the third round were the elites of the elite. In the outside world, all of them were geniuses. Lin Sun was keenly aware that among Wen Mingxiu's group, Qi Yunxiao and Yuan Shu had been eliminated in the second round of assessment. To Lin Sun's surprise, he actually saw Lian Fei enter the third round of assessment. After 2 years, Lian Fei had obviously become stronger than before, which could be seen from the fact that he could enter the third round of assessment. The rarest thing was that Lian Fei was also in the Human Gang realm. It seems that this guy has been greatly valued by Yao Tuahai in the past 2 years, so he can have such achievements today. Lin Sun was thoughtful. On the first day he entered Mist City, He learned from the spiritual screen in the center of the city that Lien Fei was now the son-in-law of Yao Tuahai, a great practitioner, and when he was promoted to human gang realm, he condensed a second-class pond of spiritual power. Lien Fei's achievements today were naturally inseparable from the cultivation of Yao Tuahai. At the thought of Yao Tuahai, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a strong killing intent. In the county test of Donglin Town, Yao Tuahai almost killed him and Xia Ji. Chapter 283. Now there were only 1,200 practitioners left in the assessment area, which seemed to be much more spacious. When Lin noticed Lien Fei, the latter also looked at him. It was hard to describe Lien Fei's expression at the moment. There was deep hatred, deep fear, and unspeakable resentment on his face. Lin Sun was his enemy who killed his father, but up to now, every revenge action against Lin Sun had ended in failure. Without Yao Tuahai's reminder, Lien Fei knew that it was impossible to deal with Lin Sun with his current strength. The saddest thing was that even his wife Yao Susu and his father-in-law Yao Tuahai forbade him from retaliating against Lin Sun. Was he reconciled to it? Lien Fei was certainly not reconciled to it. But after 2 years of tempering, he had already developed a forbearing character and would not act rashly again. But he had already made up his mind that he would kill Lin Sun with his own hands sooner or later. Suddenly, Lien Fei's pupils shrank. He saw Lin Sun in the distance, suddenly waving to him with a smile, which made his face extremely gloomy. Provocation! This damn bastard was provoking him! The hatred in Lien Fei's heart was like boiling lava, and he almost couldn't control himself. Lin Sun was too arrogant. Did this guy really think that he dared not do anything to him? Just wait and see. Sooner or later, I'll make you pay for what you've done. You'll suffer a fate worse than death. I'll make you pay 10 times, 100 times the price. With a livid face, Lien Fei turned his head angrily and didn't look at Lin Sun again. At this time, Lin Sun also withdrew his eyes with a smile, but the killing intent in his heart increased. At a glance, he knew that if people like Lien Fei were not killed, there would be endless troubles in the future. Don't let me get a chance to deal with you, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. It was late at night, but the field was still noisy. Looking around, no audience left. Obviously, they were waiting for the start of the 3rd round of assessment. The bright lights, like coiling fire dragons, dotted around the field, illuminated the world, and dispelled the night. With the ringing of the bell, the 3rd round of assessment began. This time, the assessment of top 6 fighters would be carried out. After drawing lots, 1,200 practitioners would be divided into 200 groups, with 6 people in each group. They would be divided into 2 batches to compete in 100 arenas in the field. After drawing lots, Lin Sun smiled bitterly in his heart. He was really unlucky. It turned out that among the other 5 practitioners who were about to enter the ring for a scuffle, 4 of them were in Earth Gang realm, 1 was in Heaven Gang realm, and only he was in Human Gang realm. The 4 Earth Gang realm practitioners were Lu Kexing, Wu Tsin, Zhai Shiyuan, and Chen Qing. Although the names were strange, they were all top figures in different cities of Southwest Province. The most noteworthy thing was that the Heaven Gang realm practitioner was Lu Jiao, one of the most famous top students in Mist College. This was a powerful character who was on par with Xu Shaolin, Yu Wenjing, and Yun Zitong. At the age of less than 18 years old, he could have the cultivation of Heaven Gang realm. It could be imagined how excellent his talent and root bone were. This was a little troublesome. Lin Sun frowned. He was very sure that he was undoubtedly the most vulnerable to the joint attack of these 4 Earth Gang realm and 1 Heaven Gang realm. One was that he was a great threat, and the other was that he was in Human Gang realm. Compared with Lu Jiao, who was in Heaven Gang realm, others would definitely choose to deal with him at the first time. And Lin Sun could not determine whether Lu Jiao would also join in the fight against himself once there was a scuffle. It's really unlucky. Well, it seems that I can only fight with my real ability, Lin Sun sighed in his heart. This was the result of the draw. There was nothing he could do about it. While Lin Sun frowned and sighed, there was a burst of wailing in other places in the field. Obviously, the draw results of other practitioners were not optimistic. Of course, there were also cheers of joy. They should be very satisfied with the result of the draw. It was the moon shining on Jiuzhou. Some were happy and some were sad. When Lin Sun, Lu Jiu, Lu Kexing, Wu Tsin, Zhai Shiyuan, and Chen Qing appeared together on the 9th platform, the audience suddenly burst into an uproar. There was no way. The lineup of practitioners in this group was too strong. It was hard not to attract attention. Damn it! Look, Lin Sun's opponents are not only 4 Earthgang realm strongmen, but also Lu Jiu, a top man. Once this scuffle breaks out, you can imagine how wonderful it will be. Lin Sun is in a bad situation. Although he is fierce, he is weak and can't stand the siege of others. If Lu Jiu also joins forces with others to deal with him, the consequences will be too serious. I have a hunch that as the only human gang realm strongman on the 9th platform, Lin Sun will inevitably become the common target of others. As long as he is eliminated, whether for the 4 Earthgang realm practitioners or for Lu Jiu, it is undoubtedly equivalent to eradicating a big trouble. It's too much to say that. Lu Jiu is in Heaven Gang realm. Maybe he will also become the target of other people's attack. No matter what the process is, if Lin Sun wants to win in the 3rd round of assessment, he must defeat the other 5 people on the platform. He is doomed to be difficult to pass this test. The whole audience was excited, talking incessantly, and the sound waves shook the world. Indeed, no one expected that there would be such a result of drawing lots. On the same platform, there were not only fierce people like Lin Sun, but also Lu Jiu, a top man who had long been famous in Mist City, and 4 other Earthgang realm strongmen. This combination was too luxurious. Of course, for Lin Sun, this scuffle was doomed to be a disaster. There was no way. His previous performance was too eye-catching. He could defeat the Earthgang realm strongman with only human gang realm cultivation. If he was not killed first, other practitioners would not feel at ease. Many people had been waiting to see Lin Sun's good show, and many people sympathized with Lin Sun. They thought that no matter how amazing his fighting power was, in this case, he would stop here and have no chance in the final round of assessment. If this really happened, it meant that Lin Sun would be eliminated and would not be able to pass the province test. This guy's good luck has finally come to an end. Ha 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 ha. When Qi Yunxiao, Yuan Shu and others saw this scene, they couldn't help but gloat. They thought that God couldn't tolerate Lin Sun's arrogance anymore. Otherwise, how could the result of drawing lots be so tragic? This situation is not good. Both Lin Sun and Lu Jiu are first-class figures in the younger generation. No matter which one of them is eliminated, it will be a huge loss for the province test. On the White Jade platform, Wei Lingjun, president of Mist College, frowned. He didn't expect that such a strong duel would be staged before the final round of assessment. This is fate. I have to admit that for practitioners, talent, strength, foundation and root bones are all important, but luck also plays an important role in the road of cultivation. Du Dongtu said in a deep voice, "If you are unlucky, then even if you have the power against the heaven, you are doomed to suffer all kinds of unimaginable misfortunes. On the contrary, if you are lucky, sometimes you can even make an idiot reach the sky in one step. This kind of thing has happened in the past." Yes, the top 6 tests the adaptability in the face of a melee, but there is also a part of luck in it. This is something that can't be controlled. At this time, Governor Lu Wujuan also opened his mouth and said calmly, "What's more, even if Lin Sun is eliminated this time, he can come back to participate in the province test next year at the age of less than 15. As soon as this was said, they were all silent and looked at the field. I didn't expect that Lu Jiu would meet Lin Sun at this time. It's really surprising. In the assessment area, Xu Shaolin sighed with emotion, then suddenly smiled and said with shining eyes, "But in this way, I can clearly see Lin Sun's real ability. I always have a feeling that in the first 2 rounds of assessment, this guy didn't seem to use his real killing moves at all. Even if he has hidden his killing moves, he is doomed to lose in the face of the siege of Lu Jiao and 4 other Earthgang practitioners." Yun Zitong said calmly. She was a beautiful woman with calm and elegant temperament. "Yes, I heard that when they appeared, the 4 Earthgang practitioners had already discussed that they would join hands with Lu Jiao to deal with Lin Sun first." On the other side, Yu Wenjing said with a chuckle. She was also a woman. Although her name was Wenjing, she was not quiet at all. She smiled sweetly, full of vitality and wildness. "Then Lin Sun will suffer." Xu Shaolin was stunned and couldn't help laughing. He said with a little regret, "I also wanted to have a chance to fight with Lin Sun. Unfortunately, the time is not with me." When Mingxiu was standing beside them, it was not their turn to appear at this time, so they could wait in the assessment area and see everything in the field. However, after hearing the conversation between Xu Shaolin and others, when Mingxiu didn't take it seriously. The melee fighting method of the top 6 had long been common in the bloodthirsty camp. If they thought that they could easily defeat Lin Sun by besieging him, they would make a big mistake. Of course, when Mingxiu couldn't be sure whether Lin Sun would win this time, but at least she could be sure that when Lin Sun was eliminated, there would definitely be someone who would die for him. While there was a lot of discussion in the field, Lin Sun on the arena was also looking at Lu Jiao, Lu Kexing, Wu Tsin, Zhai Shiyuan and Chen Cheng in the distance. He was keenly aware that since he boarded the arena, these 5 people's eyes were firmly fixed on him, as if they had already reached a certain tacit understanding. This made Lin Sun's heart sink. Under normal circumstances, if it was a melee, the 6 people participating in the battle should be vigilant and wary of each other. Judging from the reaction of the 5 people, it was obvious that they had discussed to deal with him first. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to focus on him at the first time. Chapter 284. No one was optimistic about Lin Sun. But Lin Sun's expression didn't change at all. He had never encountered any real danger since he participated in the province test. Whether it was dealing with Tan Long or defeating Yu Zhongtian, they were all completely suppressed within one move. There was no real fierce battle at all. Now, suddenly facing 4 Earthgang realm and 1 Heavengang realm, Lin Sun felt the pressure for the first time. But this was exactly what Lin Sun longed to see. Only by fighting with real opponents could he have a deep understanding of himself and understand the gap between himself and his enemies. Lin Sun stood quietly without saying a word. In his body, the windstorm millstone had already been running. The gang spirit of his whole body was like a roaring magma ocean, rushing and roaring. His brows were sharp like blades while his black pupils were like bolts of lightning, and his entire body was like a volcano that was about to erupt. The surface of his body was enshrouded in strands of a dreamlike azure sheen, and it caused his imposing aura to be mysterious like an abyss and naturally carry a might that looked down upon the world. Many people narrowed their eyes and keenly noticed the change of Lin Sun's aura. They couldn't help being surprised. Was Lin Sun finally going to use all his strength at this moment? Some people also noticed the change of Lin Sun's breath at the moment. Obviously, he was aware of the danger of this battle and felt great pressure. On the opposite side of the arena, Lu Jiao, Lu Kexing, Wu Tsin, Di Shiyuan and Chen Cheng also noticed the change of Lin Sun's breath. They were all shocked and ready to fight. Clang! 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 Without the slightest hesitation, they withdrew their respective spirit weapons. For a time, blade lights surged, sword lights gushed, and killing intent surged, causing the atmosphere here to instantly become incomparably austere. Obviously, even though they outnumbered Lin Sun, they still dared not be careless in the face of Lin Sun. Lin's performance in the first and second rounds of assessment was clearly seen by them. They knew that this guy was a monster. Although he was only in the human gang realm, his real fighting capacity was extremely terrible. As long as one wasn't a fool, they wouldn't dare to underestimate such a savage opponent. Including Lugio, the top of the Heaven Gang realm, they were all ready at the moment, and there was no sign of underestimating Lin Sun. But what surprised them was that even at this time, Lin Sun didn't intend to use any weapon at all. His hands were empty, which made it hard for them to figure out what he was thinking. But no matter what, they were ready to get rid of Lin Sun first. Dang! Accompanied by the clear and melodious sound of the bell, the curtains of the third round of the assessment were drawn. In an instant, Lugio and other 5 people moved almost at the same time. Without any nonsense, they attacked. Earth extinguishing slash! Amidst the loud shout, a dazzling black-colored sword light that was like a waterfall slashed down from the sky, and it was like a shocking dragon that tore through space. It was Lugio. As soon as he attacked, his figure was like lightning, and his momentum was fierce and terrible. A black spiritual sword broke through the air with immeasurable power. A wave of exclamations resounded in the surroundings. This was the might of a Heavenly Dipper realm expert. It really was peerlessly overbearing. At practically the exact same time, Lu Kexing, Wu Tsin, Di Shiyuan, and Chen Qing had already charged over from the other directions of the arena. A bronze umbrella opened and rotated like a whirlpool, spraying out thousands of red fire-like gang spirit chi. It was like fireworks soaring in the sky, gorgeous and dazzling. Boom! On the other side, a golden axe was swung up with a powerful and unyielding imposing aura, and it simply seemed as if it intended to slash apart the world and shatter the mountains and rivers. Crash! A long chain made of ghastly white bones flew like a dragon rushing out of the abyss, shaking the void with a circle of ripples. Chi-chi! A pair of brass short axes crisscrossed, cutting the air and making a sharp and harsh scream. Its speed was as fast as lightning and unparalleled. In an instant, the bronze umbrella, the golden axe, the long bone chain, and the brass short axes soared into the air. All kinds of spiritual lights were flowing, beautiful and heart-palpitating. They came from the hands of Lu Kexing, Wu Tsin, Di Shiyuan, and Chen Qing. Together with Lugio, they vividly interpreted the powerful momentum of the gang's spirit realm. This blow alone caused a sensation in the audience. All the people were horrified and kept their eyes wide open for fear of missing the slightest detail. It was too horrible. At the beginning of the battle, Lugio and others seemed to have used all their strength and showed no mercy. It was obvious that they intended to eliminate Lin Sun in the shortest time. It was slow to say, but in fact, all this happened in an instant. It was incredibly fast. If it was an ordinary practitioner, he would be suppressed out before he could react. But it was obvious that Lin Sun was not an ordinary practitioner. Boom! At the same time as Lugio and others took action, Lin Sun, who had been standing still, also moved. His figure rushed violently, and a mountain opening was used to kill Lugio. From the beginning to the end, he did not dodge, which was extremely powerful. If he could get rid of Lugio at the first time, he would get rid of the biggest threat. Boom! The terrible fist wind crushed the void, and with a bang, a black sword light of Lugio was smashed. The remaining power did not decrease, and it hit Lugio fiercely. This was not like the power of a punch. It was like a mountain moving horizontally, crushing everything and unparalleled. Lugio snorted coldly. The sword light danced and dissolved the blow, but his whole body was shaken. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This guy's strength was too abnormal. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help frowning. He had used all his strength in this blow, but it was blocked by Lugio. Obviously, Lugio, who had the cultivation of Heaven Gang realm, was not so easy to deal with. Lin Sun had no time to think about it. The attack of Lu Kexing and other 4 Earth Gang realm practitioners had been overwhelming. At this moment, Lin Sun had no time to dodge at all. He could only fight against it. His figure moved up and down, and his fist was like a dragon. The power of gang spirit spread like a surging wave, and the whole person released a kind of arrogant, powerful and indomitable momentum. Rumble! On the platform, the divine light burst, the haze splashed, and the blazing light swept. The scene was thrilling and terrifying. For a time, the spectators in the surroundings were mesmerized by this scene, and their minds shook while they were awed by this extremely intense battle. What surprised them most was that Lin Sun was not defeated at the first time in the face of the siege of 4 Earth Gang Realm practitioners and a Heaven Gang Realm practitioner. Even if he was in Human Gang Realm and barehanded, he was able to resist it. At this time, Lin Sun's figure was thin, but his momentum was like a dragon. His whole body was steaming with heavenly blue spirit light. His whole body was like an erupting abyssal volcano. His every move released extremely terrible power. Even if he was besieged by heavy attacks, he could not be completely suppressed for a while. This was terrible. Many people were trembling and couldn't believe it. Was this the power that a Human Gang Realm practitioner could have? Incredible! At this moment, the whole audience's eyes were attracted to the number 9 platform. On the number 9 platform, Lin Sun, who was besieged but did not fall, was undoubtedly the most eye-catching. This guy is so abnormal, he is a freak. Xu Shaolin, Yuan Jing, Yun Zidong and others had thought that Lin Sun was bound to be defeated, and they were waiting to see how Lin Sun would be defeated. Unexpectedly, everything on the platform broke their expectations. Lin Sun's powerful momentum made them all feel shocked, and their faces all became dignified. The most terrible thing was that Lin Sun was only in Human Gang Realm. Such a young man could withstand the siege of 4 Earth Gang Realm practitioners and a Heaven Gang Realm practitioners alone. If this was spread out, it would cause a sensation in the whole empire. I knew that he used his real strength at this time, when Mingxiu's expression was complicated, and her mind couldn't calm down. Compared with the time when he fought with Huang Jianchen, Lin Sun had become more powerful at this time. She still remembered that when Lin Sun first entered the bloodthirsty camp more than a year ago, he only had the cultivation of the 5th level of martial realm. But now he had such attainments. Those who didn't know the details of Lin Sun couldn't believe all this at all. Boom! On the platform, the fierce battle continued. Spiritual brilliance was booming and rumbling everywhere, making the world pale. Lu Jiao and the other 4 Earth Gang Realm practitioners all looked serious at the moment, and the solemnity between their eyebrows was getting stronger and stronger. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so tenacious. They had all used their spiritual weapons and performed all the secret methods they had learned without any reservation, but they still couldn't suppress Lin Sun, which was too incredible. Who could believe that this was what a Human Gang Realm practitioner could do? Kill, kill, kill. They didn't dare to think more. They gritted their teeth and performed their secret methods to the extreme, treating Lin Sun as the number 1 enemy. If they couldn't defeat Lin Sun in this battle with the strength of so many people, it would be too shameful. Their own dignity and desire for victory made Lu Jiao and others step up their offensive as if they were going to fight desperately. Fortunately, soon Lin Sun's sharpness was suppressed little by little. There were signs that he couldn't support it and was forced to retreat. This made Lu Jiao and others relieved, but the power of the attack did not weaken. On the contrary, it became more and more powerful. They knew very well that they must not give Lin Sun any chance to breathe, otherwise there would be unpredictable changes. At this point in the battle, everyone in the field also saw that Lin Sun's momentum had been faintly covered, and it seemed that it would not take long for him to be suppressed. This made many people feel relieved. This was normal. If even Lu Jiao and others couldn't suppress Lin Sun, it would be abnormal. Some people were worried about Lin Sun and couldn't bear to see him defeated. They thought that it was a miracle that he could fight against Lu Jiao and other 4 people alone with the cultivation of Human Gang Realm. They didn't want this miracle to end. Looking at the situation, no matter how powerful Lin Sun is, he is doomed to be defeated. It's a pity that he drew lots this time. Otherwise, with his combat effectiveness, I even suspect that he can be compared with those young talents in the Forbidden City of the Empire. Chapter 285. Wei Lingzhen sighed, which made Du Dongtu feel the same. He said, "Indeed, geniuses are also divided into different grades. Judging from the strength Lin Sun has shown now, he can be called a first-class figure in the whole empire, but it's a pity." There was a touch of regret in his voice. If Lin Sun failed in the province test, he would have no chance to participate in the nation test. This is fate. The result of drawing lots comes from God's will, and no one can help it. Governor Lu Wujuan said in a deep voice. Boom! On the platform, the battle became more and more fierce. Lin Sun couldn't dodge and was suddenly hit on the back by a bronze umbrella. With a bang, he staggered, with a burning pain in his back, and his bones were almost broken. Taking advantage of this great opportunity, Lu Jiao and others hurried to attack. Rumble in an instant, the attack was like an overwhelming tide, which seemed to drown Lin Sun. But at this moment, Lin Sun showed extraordinary ferocity. He gritted his teeth, dodged the oncoming attack, and suddenly broke out with his palms and fingers. Sea-splitting collapse. As the wind of the fist passed, the void was broken like a rag, and the two Earth-gang realm strongmen who rushed to him were shaken back. Before all this fell, Lin Sun gave a long roar and changed his moves. Suddenly, there seemed to be a cyan boa dragon rushing out and moving gracefully. Boa dragon's destruction. In an instant, an Earth-gang realm was caught off guard and hit by the boa dragon. He screamed suddenly, and his body seemed to be crushed by the holy mountain and thrown out. Puff! Almost at the same time, Lin Sun's left shoulder showed a flaw. Lu Jiao, who took the opportunity to attack, cut off a large piece of flesh and blood, and almost destroyed his left arm. Get out of here! Lin Sun turned back and waved his hands in the void. Suddenly, a big phoenix emerged. Its feathers were bright red like burning. It spread its wings and gave a clear cry, as if it flew out of the ancient mythology, and its power shook the sky. With a bang, although Lu Jiao tried his best to resist, he was still shocked back more than 30 meters by this blow. His blood and qi were rolling all over his body, and his internal organs were almost dislocated, which made his face sink and become colder. Lin's tenacity and strength had made Lu Jiao really angry and murderous. He absolutely could not tolerate Lin's comeback. People in the field exclaimed. The battle became more and more fierce at this time. Lin Sun seemed to be desperate at this time, which made people tremble. But what was puzzling was that Lin Sun was still bare-handed and didn't use any weapons at all. This was too abnormal. As long as one thought about it, it was impossible for a young overmatch like Lin Sun to not have a weapon of his own, no matter how poor he was. But why hadn't he used it yet? No one knew. The battle on the arena was still breaking out. Not only Lin Sun, but also several other Earth-gang realm practitioners had been injured, with blood splashing everywhere. This caused their expressions to turn livid, and they attacked without holding back in the slightest. They were completely infuriated. On the contrary, Lin Sun's expression didn't change from beginning to end. He was as cold as a rock, and his angular and handsome face was full of indifference. He was bathed in blood, and the bones on his shoulders were faintly visible, but his momentum had never weakened. On the contrary, at this time, there was a kind of surging and boundless murderous spirit, which made his momentum extremely frightening. Perhaps only when Mingxiu knew that this was Lin Sun's real fighting appearance. All the people who came out of the bloodthirsty camp had gone through hundreds of battles and been bathed in blood. And Lin Sun was the best one who came out of the bloodthirsty camp. Kill! Lin Sun's blood and qi seemed to be burning and boiling. In his body, the windstorm millstone roared and roared, running the power of his whole body, rolling like a vast ocean, majestic and boundless. On the contrary, His state of mind maintained unprecedented calmness and concentration, and there wasn't the slightest fluctuation in it. In his hands, the 9 strikes for shaking heaven was constantly displayed. Mountain-opening collapse, sea-splitting collapse, void-refining collapse, soul-shattering collapse, python-dragon collapse, phoenix collapse, hell-suppressing collapse, sky-devouring collapse, wanling collapse. The might of every single move was extraordinarily great, and they revealed a world-shocking force of destruction. This was the first fierce battle that Lin Sun encountered after he reached the mastery of Human Gang Realm and mastered the 9 strikes for shaking heaven. No one knew that the reason why Lin Sun didn't use weapons for so long was that he wanted to take advantage of this fierce battle to hone the 9 strikes for shaking heaven. The real secret method didn't need to be built behind closed doors, but needed to be tempered by blood and fire to show its real power. As a peerless sword master in the Empire said a long time ago, a peerless sword was a piece of scrap iron after all if it didn't taste blood. As time went on, Lu Wujuan on the white jade platform suddenly made a slight sound. Lin Sun's momentum seems to be getting stronger. Not only the momentum, but also the secret fighting method he used has become much stronger than before. Wei Lingjun also found some details, and his eyes couldn't help brightening. With a clap, Du Dongtu suddenly patted the table and said, "I see. The reason why he didn't use weapons for so long is that he is using this battle to hone his martial power." All the big shots narrowed their eyes and were shocked. Finally, they reacted. Combined with Lin Sun's previous performance and his power at this time, there was no doubt that Du Dongtu's speculation should be true. This boy. I really don't know what to say about him. Wei Lingjun smiled bitterly. Others also showed a strange look. Indeed, they were still regretting that Lin Sun was bound to lose this time. Whoever thought that this boy actually took this battle as an opportunity to hone his martial arts? It was too bold. Well, something is wrong. Lu Jiao and others have been fighting for so long, but they haven't defeated Lin Sun yet? It's really wrong. Don't you find that Lin Sun's combat effectiveness is changing and becoming stronger than before? That seems to be the case. My goodness, could it be that he can turn the situation around? **T, is this guy really so abnormal? It didn't take long for many sharp-eyed people in the field to notice that the situation on the platform was undergoing subtle changes. No way. How could this happen? Xu Shaolin gasped. How could he not see that Lin Sun was not completely suppressed, but began to gradually change the situation? Think about it. His opponents were 4 Earth Gang Realm practitioners and 1 Heaven Gang Realm practitioner. It was shocking that he couldn't do anything to him even when he was suppressed with all his strength. Beside him, Yuan Jing, Yun Zitong and others were also stunned. At this time, on the platform, Lin Sun became braver and braver. His whole body was steaming with blue spirit light. There seemed to be wind and thunder in his body, making a powerful roar. Every time he attacked, the void would wail, the airflow would be chaotic, and the terrible power of crushing and collapsing would be produced. This brought great pressure to 5 people, including Lu Jiao. Their faces were livid and ugly. They were surprised and doubtful. They still couldn't believe that they could not completely suppress Lin Sun at this time. Instead, Lin Sun began to change the situation little by little. What to do? If this situation continued, even if they could not suppress Lin Sun sooner or later, they would be completely suppressed by Lin Sun. In that case, they were doomed to be defeated in the end. Kill. In any case, we must not let him struggle anymore. Hurry up. Use your killing moves, or we will all be eliminated. Accompanied by loud shouts, they seemed to be desperate and crazy, exerting all their skills to attack Lin Sun with their secret methods. But almost at the same time, Lin Sun's lips suddenly raised a faint sneer. The next moment, he suddenly stretched out his body and rushed towards Lu Jiao. Different from before, Lin Sun's momentum was like a storm, with wind and rain, giving people a terrible oppressive force to the soul. Punch, push, Simple, it was still Mountain Breaker. But when this blow appeared, the void made a sharp wail and collapsed inch by inch, as if it was collapsing and sinking. Luigio's face suddenly changed, and he felt a fatal danger in his body and mind. Without any hesitation, he dodged to one side. But even then, he was still struck by the strong wind brought about by this punch. Bang! He suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood while his body seemed as if he'd been fiercely rammed by a primeval bull, and he was blasted over 30 m away before falling flat on his face. He shivered all over and was seriously injured. His face was pale and his eyes were full of disbelief. It seemed that he could not imagine that he, a Heaven Gang Realm genius, would be hit by a Human Gang Realm strongman at this moment. Witnessing this scene, the atmosphere of the audience was suddenly ignited. Many people couldn't sit still and got up, shocked and excited. Lin Sun, at this moment, counterattacked, and he also punched Luigio, the famous Heaven Gang Realm young strongman. It was so strong. This boy can't be suppressed any more. On the white jade platform, the same thought flashed in the minds of all the bigwigs. How is this possible? On the platform, the 4 Earth Gang Realm practitioners gasped and their brains were a little confused. Luigio was actually hit and sent flying? Did Lin Sun hide his strength just now? When they looked at Lin Sun again, there was a hint of fear in their eyes. What kind of person was he? He was only in Human Gang Realm. How could he be so powerful? Simply a monster. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of all this. After repelling Luigio, he seized this opportunity. Without any hesitation, he flashed towards the 4 Earth Gang Realm practitioners. Rumble, his whole body was surging with green gang chi, blazing like the sun, dazzling. His momentum soared into the sky and shocked the world. It vaguely seemed to turn into a storm vortex, crushing towards his opponent. Be careful, avoid it. Luigio roared in the distance. But it was too late. Lin Sun's figure flickered and came to him. In an instant there was a bang, 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 bang. With 4 muffled sounds, the 4 Earth Gang Realm strongmen screamed and flew out of the platform like stones. They fell to the ground, bleeding from their mouths and noses, and could no longer stand up. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, dumbfounded. Chapter 286. In an instant, 4 Earth Gang Realm strongmen were all defeated. All this happened so suddenly that people were caught off guard. Before they had time to react, it had already come to an end. Until they saw the figures of the 4 Earth Gang Realm strongmen struggling on the ground outside the arena, all the people in the audience finally dared to believe that all this was true. The indescribable shock covered the whole audience, which made the atmosphere so silent that a needle drop could be heard. Everyone's face was full of horror and confusion. How did Lin Sun do it? It was so abnormal. No one could imagine that Lin Sun, who had been suppressed before, could not resist. But now, he not only punched Luigio, who was in Heaven Gang Realm, but also defeated the other 4 strong men of Earth Gang Realm in one fell swoop. This was more than a reversal of the situation, it was a counterattack to reverse the situation. On the white jade platform, Governor Lu Wujuan, Wei Lingjun, Du Dongtu and other big shots were also silent. They had vaguely seen the signs of Lin Sun becoming stronger, but they did not expect that Lin Sun would reverse the situation so quickly. It was like a miracle, and it had suddenly arrived without anyone noticing, and it brought a pleasant surprise to everyone. At this time, on the arena, Lin Sun's thin and handsome figure stood upright. He was bathed in blood, no different from before, but in the eyes of the audience, he looked so dazzling and tall. This was power. Damn it! On the opposite side of the arena, Luigio looked livid and secretly cursed the 4 Earth Gang Realm strongmen for being so unbearable that he was also implicated. Now he could only face the freak Lin Sun alone. I didn't expect that in the end, this assessment of the top 6 turned into a competition between you and me. Haha, should I feel honored? Legio took a deep breath and said gloomily. He was not in a hurry to counterattack. At this moment, when he faced Lin Sun alone, he found that the pressure was so great. You should feel lucky. If this assessment is a duel between you and me from the beginning, do you think you can persist until now? Lin Sun looked cold and his words were not polite. In the previous battle, Legio took advantage of the Heavengang realm to bring a lot of trouble to Lin Sun. Even most of the injuries on his body were left by Legio. Therefore, at this moment, he didn't like Legio at all. Yes, this battle was unfair from the beginning. Legio took advantage of it and still acted like a good boy, which is a bit shameless. Humph, it's ridiculous that such a person can become a famous top figure in Mist College. In the battle just now, he was more ruthless than anyone else. This is the assessment. Lin Sun is besieged, which can only be attributed to his bad luck. But Legio's performance at this time is a bit shameful. As Lin Sun said, he should not only feel honored, but also feel lucky. Many people in the field echoed and cheered for Lin Sun. The sound waves were like tides, spreading through the whole field, making Legio's face suddenly become livid and ugly. Legio gritted his teeth and was about to say something, but Lin Sun interrupted him with a frown. Dude, this assessment is not over yet. Can you say anything after you are eliminated? Legio laughed angrily. Don't talk big. Do you think you can really eliminate me in a one-on-one confrontation? Lin Sun was too lazy to speak. He strode forward, and his momentum was like a dragon soaring into the sky. Boom! With a wave of his hand, he still used Mountain Breaker to crush Legio. Seeing that Lin Sun was so impolite, Legio was already furious. But in the face of this blow, his eyelids twitched, and the familiar sense of fatal danger surged in his heart again, which made him dodge to one side subconsciously. As soon as he dodged, he immediately realized that it was not right, and a strong sense of shame surged in his heart. Damn it! Sure enough, there was a burst of laughter in the field, and someone even sneered directly, Hey, Legio, weren't you very arrogant just now? Why did you run away in fear when Lin Sun made a move? Are you a rabbit? Many students of Mist College were ashamed. They were also very puzzled. Even if they couldn't beat Lin Sun, they should admit defeat earlier. Why did they have to humiliate themselves like this? And Legio's face was already red with shame and indignation. He let out a roar and took the initiative to kill Lin Sun to prove that he was not frightened by Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't say a word about this, and still hit him with Mountain Breaker with boundless momentum. Rumble, the horrible fist wind, like a wanton storm, crushed the void, made the air chaotic, and produced a terrible destructive force. When he was really shrouded by this fist wind, Legio was stiff all over, as if falling into an ice cave. His face was pale, and the shame and indignation in his heart disappeared. He had to choose to dodge again. It was terrible. If he fought hard, Legio wondered if he would be smashed by this punch. Seeing that Legio avoided for the second time, there was more and more laughter in the field. Many practitioners who were very optimistic about Legio could not help but shake their heads when they saw this. Look, this is the very famous genius of Mist College. He also has the cultivation of Heavengang realm. Isn't it shameful? Ha ha ha, your mouth is beautiful, but your body is very honest. Come on, fight. This time, even Wei Lingjin on the white jade platform couldn't help frowning. He could naturally see that Legio was not really afraid, but in the eyes of others, it became another meaning. Damn it! You are absolutely intentional. Legio was completely enraged and was about to go crazy. Up to now, he had been favored by many people and was praised as a genius. He was respected by countless young practitioners. When had he ever been so neglected and ridiculed? His eyes were red, and he vented all his anger on Lin Sun, thinking that Lin Sun deliberately embarrassed him. Lin Sun just smiled at this. Whether it's intentional or not, don't hide. Lugio was so angry that he almost coughed up blood. It was so annoying. He didn't expect that this assessment would become like this. Gio, step down. You have lost. Suddenly, Wei Lingzhen's voice came from the field, full of great majesty, suppressing all the laughter in the field. Obviously, Wei Lingzhen, the dean of Mist College, couldn't stand it anymore. Lugio shivered all over, and his face suddenly became bleak and lost his soul. Just like this, admit defeat? Didn't this mean that he had been eliminated in this province test? Lugio felt a pain in his heart and coughed up a mouthful of blood. His face became pale. Obviously, it was caused by anger and emotional ups and downs. Seeing this, many people in the field couldn't help showing pity. Lugio was more than defeated this time. From now on, they were afraid that his reputation would be ruined and he would never be able to raise his head again. But in the end, Lugio still retreated. No matter how unwilling he was, he asked himself that when facing Lin Sun alone, he really had little confidence. If he continued to fight, it would be a futile struggle after all. Looking at his dispirited exit, the faces of Xu Shaolin, Yuan Jing and Yun Zitong all became dignified and gloomy. Lugio was as famous as them, but now he was defeated by Lin Sun, and he even took the initiative to admit defeat, which made them feel extremely uncomfortable. But they also knew that if they were Lugio, they would be defeated in this battle. There was no way. Lin Sun was really a freak. He was only in the human gang realm, but he could fight against 4 Earth Gang realm practitioners and a Heaven Gang realm practitioner alone, and he won in the end. Looking at the whole empire, there might not be many freaks like Lin Sun. At this time, when all the eyes in the field looked at Lin Sun again, they had become completely different from before, with a kind of heartfelt admiration and appreciation. Before, they all thought that Lin Sun was so unlucky that he was doomed to fail in the final round of assessment. But the final result proved that it was not Lin Sun who was unlucky, but his opponents. Look at the 4 Earth Gang realm practitioners, they were defeated at the same time, and there was no suspense. Looking at Lugio, he even became a clown in the end. He was laughed at and ridiculed, which made him lose his reputation and face. Lin Sun, on the other hand, became the biggest winner of this round of assessment, just like the birth of an impossible miracle, bringing endless shock and surprise to people. The rise of this young man is unstoppable. Wei Lingzhen looked complicated and sighed with emotion. For this young man, although the final round of assessment has not yet begun, there is no suspense. Things in the world are unpredictable. Du Dongtu also sighed. From the first time he heard about the fight on a rainy night, Du Dongtu appreciated Lin Sun very much. He even wanted to recruit Lin Sun to join the Xiling army. He thought that if Lin Sun trained a little, he would become another powerful general of the empire in the future. But things in the world were unpredictable. Just looking at Lin Sun's performance today, he knew that a Xiling army could not keep such a talented young man. In the southwest province, Lin Sun is already a first-class top figure. If we look at the whole empire, he is also a first-class figure. Such a person should take part in the highest level of the empire, the nation test. Governor Lu Wujuan was also touched. He thought that if it weren't for the inseparable relationship between Lin Sun and Heiyao Shrine, even he couldn't help but want to recruit this young man as his disciple. Under the attention of the crowd, Lin Sun, standing on the arena, seemed to think of something. He suddenly took a deep breath, glanced around, and became solemn. Many people couldn't help wondering what Lin Sun was going to do. But Lin Sun smiled and said, "I only choose Golden Hall to buy spiritual weapons." All the people present were completely dumbfounded. At this time, this guy still didn't forget to help Golden Hall publicize. How shameless he was! Many young girls in the field had been conquered by Lin Sun's previous strong performance. When they heard this, they could not help showing a broken and desperate expression. Lin Sun. How could he do this? Chapter 287. On the White Jade platform, Governor Lu Wujuan, Wei Lingzhen, Du Dongtu and other big shots couldn't help but twitch their lips at this moment, with a strange look on their faces. Lin Sun. What should they say about him? When everyone in the audience reacted, Lin Sun had already left the field. After a dangerous and hardy battle, Lin Sun also suffered a lot of injuries and physical exhaustion, which must be repaired in time. He left very decisively. As for the last round of assessment, it would take 3 days to start. After Lin Sun left, the third round of assessment continued, and the news about Lin Sun's fierce battle spread throughout Mist City as soon as possible. Damn, Lin Sun is definitely a pervert. It's 2F** king crazy. Many people were shocked and exclaimed, "Poor Lugio. If he hadn't met Lin Sun, he would have passed the province test with his combat effectiveness." Many people also felt sorry for Lugio. Ha ha ha, Lin Sun is so interesting. At the end of the battle, he didn't forget to publicize Golden Hall. I can't help but want to go to Golden Hall to have a look. There were also some who laughed, not knowing whether to laugh or cry at Lin's unexpected action. None of these affected Lin Sun. As soon as he returned home, he said hello to Shu Jin and went straight into the room to sit and adjust his breath. The last round of assessment would be held in 3 days. He must repair his injuries and restore his physical strength to the peak before the assessment. In the courtyard, Shu Jin didn't sleep. He sat alone in the night and thought that in 3 days, he would leave Mist City, the Empire, and go to the dangerous and unpredictable wasteland of turmoil. Suddenly, an extremely unusual dark shadow appeared in the sky. If one looked carefully, it was surprisingly a strange black bird. It had golden eyes, red claws, 6 wings on its back, and a slender body. There seemed to be lava burning in the depths of its eyes, which was very frightening. 6-winged falcon. Suddenly, Shu Jin woke up from his chaotic thoughts. A cold light burst out of his eyes and he looked up at the sky. Why did it be sent out? Did something big happen in Heiyao Shrine? The dark 6-winged falcon swooped down, glided across the void, and quietly landed in the courtyard. The Lord has ordered you to stay here and wait for further orders. Only when new news arrives can you carry out new operations. The bird could actually speak the human language. Its voice was deep and vigorous, as if it had intelligence. What happened? Shu Jin frowned. The dark 6-winged bird shook its head and said in a deep voice, "I'm not sure yet. It seems that there is a traitor in our Heiyao Shrine who leaked some core secret." Shu Jin raised his eyebrows and his expression turned cold. Traitor? How many years has it been since something like this happened? This isn't right. Speaking of this, Shu Jin wondered, but what does this have to do with me going to the wasteland of turmoil? The 6-winged dark night bird was silent for a moment and said, "It has nothing to do with you, but it has something to do with the little guy you're looking after. I'll take my leave first. I have to go back and report to Master." As soon as it finished speaking, it lightly flapped its wings and swiftly soared into the sky. In an instant, it had actually vanished 30 kilometers into the sky. It was related to Lin Sun. Shu Jin was shocked. His eyes were full of cold light, and he was lost in thought. A traitor of Heiyao Shrine leaked some secrets, but it was related to Lin Sun whom he was protecting. What on earth was going on? Moreover, even the 6-winged dark night bird was sent to deliver the news. It could be imagined how serious this matter was. After thinking for a long time, Shu Jin finally shook his head. He got too little information to judge what was going on. Now, he could only wait for new news to come to determine the next step. But when he thought that the existence of Lin Sun actually involved a traitor in Heiyao Shrine, Shu Jin faintly felt that this matter was even more amazing than he imagined. Under the same night sky, in the Castle of Darkness, the pitch-black hall was tranquil and solemn as before, and it emanated an oppressive force. Once you do something, there is no room for retreat. What I didn't expect was that the first traitor in Heiyao Shrine in 136 years was you. In the darkness, there was an indifferent and ethereal voice. With the voice, a light emerged in the dark castle, and a ferocious white bone throne emerged. On the throne, there sat an infinitely tall figure, like the king of the eternal night, overlooking the world. The Queen of the Night. Her voice was as unique, deep and magnetic as before, as mysterious as the night. But at this moment, she didn't show her true face. Or, even if she showed her true face, there were few people in the world who could see her face. With the help of the emerging light, it could be clearly seen that in the center of the hall, there was a naked man kneeling. The man lowered his head and said nothing. Looking carefully, the man's back was penetrated by a fine black chain. The chain was steaming with black mysterious flame, like the legendary hellfire, which burned the man's skin black. But the man seemed to feel nothing. He knelt there, motionless. This strange scene was extremely horrifying. You're still the same as before. You'd rather lose your life to defend the things you're determined to do with silence. But I don't have any other idea to catch you this time. I'm just curious about what benefits the old bastard in the observatory promised you to let you choose to betray me. On the white bone throne, the Queen's voice was ethereal and low, as if she was talking about the old days, without any emotional fluctuation. The man was still silent, like a mute. Well, since you choose to defend with your life, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as the voice fell, the black chain on the man's naked back sank into the man's skin little by little. At this moment, the man seemed to be unable to bear the fatal pain, and his body trembled uncontrollably. But even so, he still lowered his head, silent, stubborn like a stubborn stone. At this time, the old man, who had been wearing a black court dress and had a kind face, walked into the hall. Without looking at the man on the ground, he bowed to the white bone throne in the distance. Miss, I've found out that the reason why the purple-souled deacon did this was to protect a woman. As soon as the words came out, the man on the ground trembled violently, and finally raised his head, revealing a weather-beaten, resolute face. But this face at this moment, with a touch of anger, and his eyes were red as if they were about to bleed, which made him look particularly ferocious. He stared at the white bone throne in the distance, and his pale and dry lips trembled. He seemed to want to say something, but finally he lowered his head, as if he had accepted his fate. Seeing this, the Queen on the white bone throne was silent for a moment, and then she sighed softly. The word love is really harmful. When the voice fell, the man on the ground was stiff, and then his body was covered with a layer of shadow like the eternal night. It could be clearly seen that his body was disappearing quietly little by little. Finally, there was no trace of him, as if he had evaporated from the world. Everything came to an end in silence. Seeing this scene, the old man couldn't help sighing. "How's the investigation going?" the Queen asked. "It has been noticed by the old priest in the observatory. They arranged the Chi family to solve the problem left by the Chi family in those years." The old man said slowly, "I have brought the words to them as you instructed, but I didn't expect that they agreed." The Queen's voice was a little surprised. "They agreed." The old man nodded. "However, they also have a condition." "Say it." A strange look appeared on the old man's face. "They said that it's okay to let Lin Sun live, but it depends on whether he can enter the Forbidden City smoothly." There was a silence on the white bone throne. After a long time, the old man said, "Is this the meaning of the old thing in the observatory?" The old man nodded. "It should be so." The Queen thought for a moment and said, "What are they going to do?" The old man said, "Chi family will send forces to stop Lin Sun on the way to the Forbidden City. The old thing's decision this time is a little strange." "What does he want to do?" the Queen murmured softly. The old man was also lost in thought. Obviously, he also didn't know the real reason. "Well, since he wants to play like this, let's play with him. I'd like to see what he wants to do." The Queen made a decision. "Tell Shu Jin that there is a change in the plan. He will take Lin Sun into the Forbidden City in person." The old man shook his head and said, Miss, they have said that if we don't intervene in this matter, they will only send practitioners below sea spirit realm to stop Lin soon. Otherwise, all the conditions promised before will be invalid. Oh, do they think that they can defeat me? There was a trace of coldness in the Queen's voice. The old man murmured, Miss, anyway, I think we can give it a try. This is more like a test for Lin Sun than a condition of the other party. I'm afraid there are some secrets hidden in it that we don't know. The Queen was silent for a moment and said, Well, send the news to Shu Jin and let Lin Sun choose by himself. Tell him that if he comes to the Forbidden City, he may be killed on the way. But if he doesn't come to the Forbidden City, he will never have a chance to know his real life in this life. He can choose by himself. The old man bowed slightly and left. The hall returned to darkness, empty and tranquil. The next evening, Shu Jin saw the six-winged dark night falcon again and learned about everything. Zihun. It's him. Shu Jin was slightly absent-minded. Zihun, one of the 12 deacons of Heiyao Shrine, was a strong practitioner of Tao Insight Realm. Even Shu Jin didn't dare to say that he could defeat him, but such an expert had actually become a traitor. Shu Jin was a little confused. What was going on? A piece of news about Lin Sun could make him choose to betray Heiyao Shrine? Chapter 289. Shu Jin thought for a long time and finally sighed softly. According to the instructions, he could only tell Lin Sun about it, and he could not help Lin Sun anymore. Shu Jin had a strong hunch that when Lin Sun knew all this, he would not choose to retreat according to his temperament. 3 days passed in a hurry. Lin Sun didn't know that on the night 3 days ago, a dark six-winged falcon came to the small courtyard where he lived at night. He also didn't know that his life experience had caused a turbulent undercurrent in the Forbidden City, the capital of the distant empire. Now his mind was all on the province test. After 3 days of recuperation, his injuries had recovered to their original state. What made Lin particularly happy was that, after the fierce battle in the 3rd round of assessment, his control of 9 strikes for shaking heaven had reached the level of initial glimpse and began to move towards the realm of nuance. Nuance was the meaning of insight into subtlety and mystery. Only by mastering the essence and mystery of a cultivation method could one really exert the full power of a cultivation method. Early in the morning, Lin Sun washed himself and stepped out of the courtyard. Today would be the last round of the province test. Whether he could get the certificate of the province test smoothly or not depended on today's battle. Mist College. It was an unprecedented scene of crowds of people. The seats in the arena were already filled with people, all of them raising their heads in anticipation. After the first 3 rounds of assessment, only 200 practitioners were left to enter the last round of assessment. Today, the 200 practitioners who had been screened out would compete with each other and become the winners of the province test. The last round of assessment is finally coming. I don't know who can stand out this time and become the biggest winner of the province test. Who else can it be? Lin Sun. That's hard to say. In the 3rd round of assessment, although Lin Sun's performance was extremely dazzling, there were many top practitioners who could compete with him, such as Xu Shaolin, Yuan Jing, Yun Zitong, and so on. Are you kidding me? Even Lu Jiao was defeated by Lin. How could Xu Shaolin be Lin's opponent? You should be clear that the final result of the assessment will be based on the specific performance of the previous 3 rounds of assessment. According to Lin Sun's previous performance, as long as he performs well in the last round of assessment, he will be able to take the 1st place. Oh, that's hard to say. It's Governor Lu Wujuan and other bigwigs who will evaluate the results. Who knows what their final judgment will be? The crowd discussed animatedly while waves of voices surged through the heavens and the earth like the tide. In the assessment area, Lin Sun and the other 199 practitioners were already waiting there. Some of them were meditating with their eyes closed, some were talking softly, and some were silent in thought. This last round of assessment was the key to determining whether one could pass the province test. Once he failed, no matter how excellent his performance in the first 3 rounds of assessment was, it would not change anything. Under such circumstances, these practitioners who had overcome all difficulties to get to where they were now were also determined to win the last round of assessment. No one was willing to be eliminated at the last moment. If that happened, the blow they would suffer would be too severe. Lin Sun stood there alone, a little absent-minded. Just when he went out in the early morning, he was keenly aware that Shu Jin seemed to want to say something to him, but finally stopped. This seemed a little abnormal. Old Jin shouldn't be so indecisive, Lin Sun pondered. Soon, Lin Sun had no time to think more, because with the ringing of the bell, the last round of assessment had begun. Like the first 3 rounds of assessment, this time the opponent was still chosen by drawing lot. The rule was very simple. Defeat the opponent and you would win. At present, there were only 200 people left in the field, and they could fight one by one. The loser would be eliminated, and the winner would pass the province test. Then, the chief examiner Lu Wujuan and other bigwigs would judge the final ranking based on the comprehensive performance of the winner in the 4 rounds of assessment. Lin Su's opponent in the draw this time was a young man named Wang Kong, who came from a city called Yunjing in the southwestern province. He was not very famous before, but to be able to fight his way out of the encirclement and enter the final round of assessment, it was enough to prove how powerful this person was. In other words, the 200 practitioners who could participate in the last round of assessment could almost be regarded as the top figures of the young generation, and none of them was ordinary. However, there were differences between the top figures. Compared with a freak like Lin Sun, Wang Kong seemed a little mediocre. When he learned that his opponent was Lin Sun, Wang Kong suddenly screamed. His hands trembled, and the sticks he drew fell to the ground. He looked helpless as if he had suffered a heavy blow. No one laughed. On the contrary, all the practitioners present showed sympathy for Wang Kong. He was so unlucky to have drawn Lin Sun, the unlucky star. Some people secretly rejoiced and breathed a long sigh of relief, feeling extremely lucky and happy that their opponent was not Lin Sun. Even the top dazzling figures, such as Xu Shaolin, Yuan Jing and Yun Zidong, who were favored by most people, showed more or less relaxed when they confirmed that their opponent was not Lin Sun. This reaction was extremely subtle, but it also showed how frightening Lin Sun was in the hearts of those practitioners. When Lin Sun saw all this, he couldn't help but feel speechless. Was he so terrible? Lin Sun finally tasted the feeling of standing out from the crowd and being lonely at the top. Of course, Lin Sun also knew that this only proved that his strength had been recognized by the young generation of practitioners in the southwest province of the empire. In other territories of the empire, there must be peerless figures who were not inferior to him, or even better than him. Even if all this aside, the so-called province test was just an assessment after all. Most of his opponents were of the same generation, so there was nothing to be proud of. At least in terms of cultivation, he was just in the human gang realm after all, and there was still a long way to go. The last round of assessment began. The whole audience was completely excited, and the atmosphere was unprecedentedly hot. But for Lin Sun, the last round of assessment seemed a little boring. His opponent, Wang Kong, was indeed an extremely powerful character. Even though he had lost his composure before, when he was fighting, Wang Kong displayed all the advantages that a top practitioner should have: calmness, steadiness, and concentration. Unfortunately, his opponent was Lin Sun. After a moment of struggle, he was suppressed by Lin Sun and finally defeated. I knew that Lin Sun would never let us down. Human Gang Realm, fighting in 4 rounds of assessment, won the battle in one fell swoop. In the past province test, few people can compare with Lin Sun. What a monster! I didn't believe that there were real geniuses in the world before, but after seeing Lin Sun, I finally believe it. 3 months later, the Empire's Nation test will begin. I'm looking forward to Lin Sun representing our Southwest province and competing with all the talents in the nation test. Countless cheers broke out in the field. On the white jade platform, Governor Lu Wujuan and others looked at each other, all showing an expression that it was natural. Yes, through the first 3 rounds of assessment, they had already clearly judged that no one could stop Lin Sun's pace of passing the province test. At this moment, Lin Sun's victory undoubtedly proved that their speculation was not wrong. But when they looked around, they were stunned to find that Lin Sun had already disappeared. Obviously, Lin Sun left early again. This boy doesn't take the province test seriously. He just left as if he didn't care about his assessment results at all. Wei Lingzhen shook his head. Oh, this is normal. I've been worried about what Golden Hall would do if he publicized it after winning. Du Dongtu laughed, but then again, this boy is also a wonderful person. He doesn't play cards according to common sense and is different from other practitioners. It's really rare. If he thinks that in this province test, he can get the first place with his comprehensive score, he is too naive. Governor Lu Wujuan snorted. Wei Lingzhen and Du Dongtu both smiled and said, Brother Lu, in my opinion, it doesn't matter whether he is the first place or not. Lu Wujuan was stunned. After thinking about it carefully, he couldn't help but admit that Lin Sun was indeed different from others. It was a bit too much to say that he was deviant, but he was definitely an alien. I'm curious whether he will take part in the nation test 3 months later. Wei Lingzhen pondered. He shouldn't miss it, but it's not certain whether he can win. After all, those who can take part in the nation test are all the top talents in the world, and some of them have even reached the sea spirit realm. Du Dongtu said in a deep voice, although Lin Sun's fighting capacity can compete with Heavengang realm, if he meets a real opponent, his cultivation will become his most fatal shortcoming. It's too early to say this. After the last round of assessment, please join me to judge the results of the practitioners who passed the province test. Governor Lu Wujuan ordered. All the great figures nodded their heads in delight. But in their hearts, they already had a clear answer to Lin Sun's comprehensive score. Lin Sun left Mist College in a hurry and went straight home. Shu Jin would leave today. Lin Sun was worried that this guy would leave without saying a word, so he left as soon as the assessment was over. Fortunately, when he returned home, Shu Jin was still there, which made Lin Sun feel relieved and said with a smile, Jin, we haven't had a good drink together yet. Let's get drunk today, shall we? In the past, Shu Jin would never hesitate to agree when he heard of drinking. But at this time, he shook his head and said, Boy, since the province test is over, there's something I have to tell you. His expression was complicated and his mood was different from before. Chapter 290. Everyone in Mist City was celebrating the last round of province test. It was noisy, lively, and unprecedentedly grand. But in the small courtyard, the atmosphere was a little quiet. Sitting at the stone table, Lin Sun fell into a long silence after listening to Shu Jin's words. Only then did he know that the Queen of the Dark Night named Lulan Jinian had already guessed his origin. But Lin Sun didn't expect that his origin would make a bigwig of Tao Insight Realm in the Dark Night Templar choose to betray him. All this made Lin Sun realize that the enemy who dug away his spiritual vein must be powerful and terrible beyond imagination. Otherwise, how could the strong man in the Tao Insight Realm named Zi Hun reveal his identity at all costs? Now that I'm still alive, I'm afraid those enemies are very surprised, right? Lin Sun's heart was indescribably complicated. He didn't know whether he should feel lucky or angry. It was as if a stone was stuffed in his chest, making him uncomfortable. Who was he? Who was the enemy who dug away his spiritual vein? Lin Sun had thought about these questions more than once. The only thing he could be sure of was that the reason why he didn't die was that Master Lu must have helped him. But it was a pity that Master Lu never told Lin Sun about these things until the moment when the mine prison was destroyed. Master Lu told Lin Sun that only by going to Xiao Empire could he find out his origin. Originally, Lin Sun thought that when he passed the nation test and entered Green Deer School, he could use the unique resources of Green Deer School to investigate all this. But now, he suddenly realized that someone had already known about his identity. Why didn't the Queen of the Dark Night tell him earlier? Could it be that there was some hidden story behind this? Lin Sun couldn't figure it out. When he was about to get closer to the truth, he found that things were far more complicated than he thought. Seeing Lin Sun was silent for a long time, Shu Jin couldn't help sighing in his heart and said, "His Excellency said that you can choose not to go to the Forbidden City. In my opinion, this is the wisest choice. At least, you won't encounter fatal danger." Lin Sun suddenly said, "Old Jin, I have never told you that the reason why I entered Xiao Empire is to find out my origin." Shu Jin frowned. "I can roughly guess, but if you lose your life to find out who you are, what's the point?" After a pause, he took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "You don't understand. Zihun's betrayal is a signal. It proves that those who stop you from going to the Forbidden City are more terrible than you think. If you insist on going, you are doomed to die." Lin Sun said thoughtfully, "Of course I understand. But didn't you just say that they won't send a force beyond Gang's spirit realm to deal with me? That's enough." Shu Jin frowned even more. "What do you know? Even if you enter the Forbidden City smoothly, so what? That was the capital of the Empire. You're alone, so it's impossible for you to be their opponent. To put it bluntly, based on the strength they displayed, killing a little fellow like you is as easy as crushing an ant." Lin Sun suddenly laughed. "Old Jin, you're wrong. If they really want to kill me, they don't have to do that. They can just send someone to Mist City to kill me." Speaking of this, Lin Sun's clear black eyes flashed with a strange luster. "And I have an intuition that the reason why they don't kill me directly has nothing to do with Heiyao Shrine, but they seem to have other plans." Shu Jin was stunned. He also vaguely felt that there was something strange about this matter before, but he didn't expect that Lin Sun would notice it so soon. Lin Sun said firmly, "Old Jin, I must go to the Forbidden City. You don't have to persuade me anymore." Looking at the firm expression on the young man's face, Shu Jin hesitated for a long time and finally sighed softly, no longer persuading him. "Come on, drink. I don't know when I can see you again after I go to the Forbidden City. Don't mention those disappointing things today. Just get drunk." Lin Sun showed a bright smile and took out a jar of wine. "Humph! Get drunk? Let's see if you can make me drunk." With a cold snort, Shu Jin directly opened the jar and drank up. Lin Sun smiled, knowing that Shu Jin had agreed with his decision. In the evening, the vigorous province test came to an end, and a total of 100 practitioners passed the test. Although the province test was over, the discussion about this test did not stop. On the contrary, it became more and more intense. The analysis of each classic battle, and the final ranking of the winners of the province test, had become a hot topic. Without exception, the battle in the third round of assessment, where Lin Sun fought against 5 opponents by himself, was recognized as the most classic battle in this year's province test. Similarly, without exception, Lin Sun became the most popular candidate for the first place in the comprehensive assessment. Although all this was related to Lin Sun, as the person concerned, Lin Sun had no mind to pay attention to all this. Early the next morning, Lin Sun woke up from a hangover and went directly to Golden Hall to meet Gu Liang, who was busy. With the end of the province test, the popularity of Golden Hall did not decline, but became more and more popular. A large number of practitioners came every day. All this was inseparable from Lin Sun's propaganda. In the quiet room, Gu Liang happily talked about the changes of Golden Hall these days. Sometimes he was excited, sometimes he was distressed, sometimes he was beaming with joy, and sometimes he sighed. Of course, the so-called distress and sighing were all with joy. Lin Sun sat there and listened quietly. Only then did he know that Gu Liang had begun to prepare to refine the 7 new spiritual weapons, and specially named them Golden Scale series. When these spiritual weapons were sold in the future, they would be crowned with the unique logo of Golden Scale series, which became the pioneer of the rise of Golden Hall. The so-called Golden referred to Golden Hall, and the homophone of scale was Lin, which naturally referred to Lin Sun. The word Golden Scale also implied auspiciousness and wealth. The so-called Golden Scale was not something in the pond, but could change into a dragon when it met the wind and cloud. This kind of naming obviously took a lot of thought, which also showed how much importance Gu Liang attached to this matter. Neither Lin Sun nor Gu Liang knew what a sensation the Golden Scale series would cause in the empire in the future. It was like a dazzling star that came out of the sky and was fanatically pursued by countless practitioners. At this time, Lin Sun just listened quietly with a smile on his lips. He could feel Gu Liang's ambition, and in fact, he was also very envious of Gu Liang. At least Gu Liang could focus all his enthusiasm on his favorite Taoist path. By the way, what are you doing here this time? At the end of his words, Gu Liang suddenly realized that he had forgotten the purpose of Lin Sun's coming. When the final result of the province test comes out and I get the province test certificate, I will leave Mist City and go to the Forbidden City. I'm here to tell you in advance. Lin Sun said casually. So soon? Gu Liang was stunned and a little reluctant. We haven't had a good drink together, and you're leaving? Lin Sun said with a smile. I also want to, but look at the current Golden Hall. If you are drunk, who will take charge of the overall situation? Gu Liang immediately smiled bitterly. Indeed, he was very busy these days. Not to mention drinking, even the rest time was squeezed to the extreme. Alas, I can't compare with you. You passed the province test smoothly and will soon go to the Forbidden City to make a name for yourself. I'm so envious. Gu Liang sighed. Lin Sun didn't bother to fight back. He got up and said goodbye. Go ahead. I have to go to Keystone Business and the commune of spiritual tattooists. Gu Liang got up to see Lin Sun off. Watching Lin Sun's back disappear in the street, he suddenly frowned. He felt that Lin Sun seemed to be a little different today, as if he was hiding something. Immediately, Gu Liang had no time to think more. There was another distinguished guest in Golden Hall, and he had to receive him in person. Keystone Business. When Lin Sun arrived, Mu Wansu was not there. She said that she went to a mine to inspect goods and would return in half a month at the earliest. Lin Sun shook his head and turned away. He didn't know many people in Mist City, and Mu Wansu was one of them. Now that Mu Wansu was not here, he could only wait to meet her in the future. Of course, he had to be alive to meet her. Before long, Lin Sun arrived at the commune of spiritual tattooists and was warmly received by Chu Feng. After chatting for a while, Lin Sun told his purpose of coming. Chu Feng had long known that there would be such a day. After all, Lin Sun had passed the province test, and with his fighting capacity, he could definitely go to the nation test. It's a pity. If it weren't for secular affairs, I would accompany you to the Forbidden City. Chu Feng sighed with emotion. I haven't been back to the Forbidden City for many years. Bro, I've heard something about you. When there's a chance in the future, I will help you return to the Forbidden City and get back what belongs to you. Lin Sun said seriously. Mu Wansu had mentioned to him what happened at the celebration of Keystone Business last time and also told him something about Chu Feng's past. Lin Sun finally knew that Chu Feng was expelled from his clan and had to take refuge in Mist City. Bro, Chu Feng was stunned at once. His mood fluctuated and he couldn't calm down. He never thought that Lin Sun would make such a promise at this time, which deeply touched him. He was grateful and surprised, and didn't know what to say for a while. Lin Sun stood up and said with a smile, Bro, don't say more. It won't be too late for you to thank me when there's a chance to solve that problem in the future. Immediately, Lin Sun left. He had seen all the people he should see and said all the words he should say. Next, it was time to prepare for the journey to the Forbidden City. Chapter 291. Whoosh. On the stone table in the courtyard, a meticulously drawn and well-detailed parchment map was spread out. Lin Sun took an inscribing pen and drew a red circle in the position of Mist City. Then he looked at it carefully. After leaving the commune of spiritual tattooists, Lin Sun bought this map from a bookstore specializing in selling all kinds of topographical books. The topographic trend of the 34 provinces of the empire was detailed on it. Shu Jin came over and took a glance at it. Then he took the inscribing pen from Lin Sun's hand and drew 3 zigzag lines on the map, all of which started from Mist City and led to the Forbidden City, the core of the empire in the north. These are the 3 routes to Mist City. The westernmost route needs to pass through 37 cities and hundreds of mountains, including some dangerous places. If you choose to go to the Forbidden City by this route, accidents are likely to happen on the way. Shu Jin said in a deep voice, the easternmost route needs to go through the Soul Oblivion Sea. It was the safest way in the past, but not now. At this time of the year, the Soul Oblivion Sea will enter a turbulent period with frequent storms and tsunamis. Besides, there are many fierce beasts in the sea. No one dares to go to the Soul Oblivion Sea at this time. Lin Sun's eyes fell on the middle route and said, this seems to be the shortest route to the Forbidden City? Shu Jin nodded and said, although there are some natural hazards and dangerous places on this road, you can pass unimpeded by taking a spiritual shuttle or a battleship. Speaking of this, Shu Jin looked up at Lin Sun, but I don't recommend you to go to the Forbidden City by this road, because the enemy will definitely send a large number of troops to guard along the way. Lin Sun was silent. Shu Jin continued, Kid, I suggest that you take the western road. Although the road is long and tortuous, and there are many dangerous places, the possibility of being attacked by the enemy is much smaller. Lin Sun finally shook his head and refused. He pointed to the road in the middle of the map and said, I'll go from here. It's thousands of miles to the Forbidden City. Unless the enemy sends tens of thousands of elite troops, it is impossible to control all the places along the way. Shu Jin frowned. Do you think that the most dangerous place is the safest? Lin Sun shook his head and said, I have a hunch that no matter which way we go, we will inevitably encounter the forces sent by the enemy. In this case, it is better to choose the most direct way. What's more, they have already made it clear that they won't send out strong practitioners beyond Gang's spirit realm. In this case, there is no need to be afraid of so much. Shu Jin was silent for a moment before he said, Do you really want to do this? Lin Sun nodded. Shu Jin stopped persuading him and asked, How are you going to go to the Forbidden City? Lin Sun said casually, Didn't you say that only spiritual shuttles can pass through the dangerous places along the way? Then let's take spiritual shuttles. Speaking of this, Lin Sun put away the map and carefully hid it on his body. Then he said, Old Jin, please help me get the certificate of province test 2 days later. I need to prepare some gadgets these 2 days. Trinkets? Shu Jin was puzzled. Lin Sun said with a smile, Well, you won't be interested in some killing gadgets, but they should be effective in dealing with the enemies this time. As he said, he turned around and walked into the house. When Lin Sun returned from the outside, he not only bought a map but also a large number of spiritual materials and spiritual medicine. More than 10,000 gold coins he had saved were completely spent. But in order to enter the Forbidden City this time, Lin Sun would not hesitate. This kid, could it be that he's going to refine some powerful crossbow bolts? Shu Jin's heart moved. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it must be so. Don't forget that Lin Sun was also a spiritual tattooist with profound attainments in spiritual tattoos. In the Forbidden City in an ancient mansion with a history of thousands of years. Everyone, there is only one thing for you to come here this time. Stop a young man named Lin Sun from entering the Forbidden City. Chi Tsangmei's sharp eyes glanced at the people around her. Her tone was gentle, but it showed that she could not refuse. Although Chi Sangmei was a young girl, her starry eyes were like lightning and her temperament was arrogant. She had a strong momentum. In fact, she did have the capital to be arrogant. She was 17 years old this year. She was a lineal member of Qi family, one of the 7 top aristocratic families in the Forbidden City. Her identity was very prominent. Even her cultivation had reached Sea Spirit Realm. She was known as the Pearl of the young generation of Qi family. Beside Qi Sangmei, there were 4 or 5 young people, all of whom were dignified and extraordinary. At first glance, they knew they were the descendants of nobles. But at this moment, in the face of Qi Sangmei, these young people subconsciously restrained their pride and became very respectful. Whoosh! Qi Sangmei spread out a map, on which many symbols had already been outlined. Obviously, it had been studied by Qi Sangmei. There are about 3 feasible ways to go from Mist City to the Forbidden City. The westernmost way is to pass through 37 cities, Qi Sangmei said quickly. If Lin Sun was here, he would definitely find that the 3 routes outlined by Qi Sangmei were almost exactly the same as what Xu Jin pointed out. The 4 or 5 young men all showed a serious look and dared not neglect. At the end, Qi Sangmei raised her head, glanced at the crowd and said, "No matter which route the target chooses, I want to arrange our people on all 3 routes." As soon as these words came out, those young people couldn't help but be surprised. Someone couldn't help saying, "It seems a little," Qi Sangmei said indifferently. "Do you all think it's a fuss?" Others nodded. What a joke. It was just to stop a teenager of Human Gang realm. How could it be necessary to mobilize so many people? If this was really done, the manpower and materials to be mobilized would be too large. There were at least thousands of Gang Spirit Realm practitioners to be mobilized. Qi Sangmei didn't say more. She took out an animal skin scroll and handed it over. There is some information about the target recorded on it. You can have a look first. Those young people instantly moved forward, opened the scroll, and started reading it. In merely a short moment, their expressions changed in unison, and they became surprised and bewildered. Later, even some people couldn't help but gasp with shock in their eyes. The animal skin scroll recorded what Lin Sun had done in Mist City, including the bloody killing in the rainy night and the peak battle with Huang Jianchen. The most important thing was that it clearly recorded that Lin Sun was one of the trainees who successfully graduated from Bloodthirsty Camp. But no matter which thing it was enough to prove that this teenager named Lin Sun was absolutely an extremely powerful character. I didn't expect that a teenager of Human Gang realm less than 15 years old had such a powerful fighting capacity. Even Huang Jianchen, a madman, was defeated by him. He really can't be underestimated. Someone sighed. The most terrible thing is that he is one of the trainees who successfully graduated from Bloodthirsty Camp. People like him are the most ruthless, cold, and cunning. They are not only good at assassination and lurking, but also proficient in fighting to save their lives. They are no different from monsters. They looked dignified. From Lin Sun's identity as a trainee of Bloodthirsty Camp, they smelled something different. However, no matter how powerful Lin Sun is, he is just a Human Gang realm practitioner. What's more, he is alone. If we want to stop him from entering the Forbidden City, we can choose a more labor-saving way. Some people still thought that Qi Sangmei's arrangement just now was a little too much. Before Qi Sangmei could say more, the door was pushed open, and a thin man with a sallow face came in. Su Qianjing, why are you here? When they saw the man in green, those young people were surprised and couldn't believe it. Su Qianjing, a genius in the Divine Strategies courtyard of Green Deer School, was proficient in the deployment of troops and had a superb attainment in the way of deduction. Even in Strategy Yard, where many dazzling generals were born, Su Qianjing was still a figure that no one dared to ignore. Last year, Su Qianjing won the first place in the triennial strategy battle of Green Deer School against hundreds of peers who were proficient in ranking and tactical deployment. He became the youngest tactical master in this year's strategy courtyard. How could those young people not be surprised to see such a genius with many dazzling halos suddenly appear? Don't be surprised. I invited Qianjing here. Qi Tsangmei explained casually and invited Su Qianjing to take a seat. She personally poured a cup of tea for Su Qianjing, which was quite respectful. In other words, only a person like Su Qianjing deserved such treatment from Qi Tsangmei. I just got the news that Lin Sun has passed the province test of Southwest Province, and his comprehensive score is rated as the first. As soon as Su Qianjing sat down, he dropped a heavy bomb, which shocked the others and made their expressions change. There were a total of 34 provinces in the empire, but Lin Sun could become the first in the province test of Southwest Province. It could be imagined how powerful he was. Even Qi Tsangmei couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Is he still in Human Gang realm? This was the key question. Su Qianjing nodded. The result of the province test can't be false. According to the news, in the third round of the province test, Lin Sun alone defeated 4 Earth Gang realm and 1 Heaven Gang realm. None of these defeated opponents was ordinary. Lin Sun's current combat effectiveness can only prove that he can compete with Heaven Gang realm overmatches. He is a great young overmatch. His face was sallow, but his eyes were extremely clean and clear, like the transparent sky, which could reflect everything in the world. His voice was gentle, soft, and orderly, which made people feel like being bathed in the spring breeze, with a kind of admirable calm and elegant temperament. But when his words fell into the ears of other people present, they couldn't help but change their expressions. Chapter 292. After a moment of shock, even the young man who thought that Qi Tsangmei was making a fuss didn't say much. Qi Tsangmei asked, "Qianjing, what do you think we should do this time?" Su Qianjing thought for a while and said, "I need to know our forces and materials." Qi Tsangmei said without hesitation, 2,000 elite practitioners are all powerful characters selected from many forces attached to Qi family. Among them, there are 300 Heaven Gang realm practitioners, 500 Earth Gang realm practitioners, and 1,200 Human Gang realm practitioners. At the same time, there are 6 new Ziying battleships and 16 batches of short crossbows purchased from the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire, 100 in each batch. In addition, there are a batch of marching equipment and medicinal pills, with a total value of 50,000 gold coins. Speaking of this, many people couldn't help but gasp. They already knew that Qi Tsangmei was determined to complete the task with all her strength, but they didn't expect that she had prepared such amazing manpower and materials. 2,000 elite practitioners, 6 new Ziying battleships, 16 batches of short crossbows of different specifications. There were also 50,000 gold coins worth of marching equipment and medicinal pills. This kind of power was more than enough to deal with Sea Spirit Realm practitioners, let alone a Human Gang realm teenager. It could be seen how much Qi Tsangmei attached importance to Lin Sun, which made those young people suddenly realize that the origin of Lin Sun was more complicated than they thought. Otherwise, how could Qi family spend so much money on him? Hearing all this, Su Qianjing didn't show any expression. His clear eyes were surging with thoughts. After a while, he said, "These are not enough. I need a group of Wind Shadowhawks as scouts to monitor the target in all directions and establish an intelligence network to ensure that we get all the news about the target in the first time. In addition, I need detailed information about the 2,000 elite practitioners that will be sent out this time." Qi Tsangmei thought for a moment and nodded. At this time, Su Qianjing looked at the 4 or 5 young people and said, "Who are these friends?" Qi Tsangmei explained, "They are some of my friends. In this task, they will serve as your deputies." Su Qianjing nodded, got up and said, "I owe Qi family a favor. This time I will try my best to complete this matter. But I will not bear any responsibility if this matter fails." As he spoke, he pushed the door and left. "This fellow is so rude." Seeing that Su Qianjing's attitude was so rude and unreasonable, those young people couldn't help but feel gloomy. Qi Tsangmei didn't think so. She waved her hand and said, "Qianjing is such a person. Since he has promised this, he must have full confidence to complete it." Someone was still displeased and said, "But his attitude is too terrible." Qi Tsangmei said indifferently, "If you have the ability of Su Qianjing, you can do the same. I promise I will respect you as much as I respect him." The man was stunned and immediately shut up. Even if he was dissatisfied with Su Qianjing, he knew that he was still far behind Su Qianjing, a young tactical master from Green Deer School. "Well, from now on, you will follow Su Qianjing and listen to his orders. No matter who you are, you must fully carry out his orders without any disobedience. Otherwise, if something goes wrong because of your negligence, don't blame me for being rude." A cold light flashed in Qi Tsangmei's sharp eyes, which made those young people feel cold in their hearts and dare not look at her. 2 days later, Shu Jin left the courtyard and went to the governor's mansion. The results of the province test had come out. Without exception, Lin Sun was rated as the first place by a group of examiners. Shu Jin's task was to help Lin Sun get the certificate of province test. Only with the certificate could Lin Sun participate in the nation test 3 months later. Walking on the bustling street of Mist City, people were talking about the result of the province test everywhere. Lin Sun's name was almost inevitable in all kinds of topics. His performance in the province test was vividly spread, which caused all kinds of exclamations, envies and admiration from time to time. What did it mean to be famous? That was it. Today, Lin Sun was like a dazzling star in the whole southwest province of the empire, who was well known by all. Hearing these discussions along the way, Shu Jin couldn't help but sigh with emotion in his heart. From Lin Sun entered Mist City to being famous now, it was only less than a year. All this was like a miracle. Shu Jin thought that if those practitioners in Mist City knew that the Master Sun they were familiar with was also Lin Sun, their expressions would be very interesting. Today was the day of unveiling. The so-called unveiling meant that the comprehensive ranking of the practitioners who passed the test would be released after the province test. In front of the governor's mansion, there was already a sea of people at this time. Almost all of them came to see those practitioners who passed the test. Because today, the top 100 practitioners who passed the test would all come to the governor's mansion to get the certificate of province test. For those who were not qualified to enter Mist College to watch the test during the province test, it was undoubtedly an opportunity to get close to those practitioners. Where is Lin Sun? Why hasn't he shown up yet? Yes, I've been waiting here since last night, just to find the best place to have a good look at what the champion of the province test looks like. But now, almost all the other practitioners have shown up, except for him. Humph, maybe this guy is deliberately putting on airs. Who wouldn't be proud of being the first place of the province test? Bastard! Whoever dares to speak ill of my idol Lin Sun, I will fight with him. In all kinds of noise, Shu Jin's figure appeared in front of the governor's mansion. When he saw such a spectacular scene, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. After thinking about it, Shu Jin went straight forward. Along the way, all the people in front of him seemed to be moved away by an invisible force, allowing Shu Jin to walk past easily. And those who were moved away didn't even know it. Just this method of using power could be said to have reached the acme of perfection and was at the peak of perfection. But when he arrived at the gate of the governor's mansion, a man who looked like a scholar found Shu Jin coming straight to him. He frowned and shouted, "Stop! This is the governor's mansion. Anyone who trespasses will die." This man was Ruan Lingdu, a trusted counselor of Governor Lu Wujuan. Of course, he had another identity, a visiting professor of Chu clan in the Forbidden City. At the centennial celebration of Keystone Business, Yuan Lingdu tried to suppress and humiliate Chu Feng, but in the end, he ended up humiliating himself. Of course, Shu Jin didn't know this. Hearing Yuan Lingdu's impolite rebuke, he just frowned and said, "I'm here to help Lin Sun get the certificate of province test." Yuan Lingdu's face suddenly darkened. Lin Sun is so arrogant. He didn't come in person on the day of the announcement. It's too rude. Shu Jin made an "oh" sound and patiently explained. He had no choice. "Please forgive him, friend." Yuan Lingdu sneered. "No, the governor's mansion has its own rules. How can it be casually broken? What's more, who will believe that you are here to help Lin Sun get the certificate of province test? What if you're someone who's just here to make up the numbers and has bad intentions?" When Lin Sun was mentioned, it reminded Yuan Lingdu of the last encounter at the centennial celebration of Keystone Business. If it weren't for Lin Sun, how could Chu Feng be qualified to sit in the chief VIP position? Because of this position, Yuan Lingdu suffered for no reason and was full of anger. At this time, since Lin Sun didn't come in person, he naturally didn't mind making things difficult for the helper sent by Lin Sun. "Oh, so you're not going to let me in?" Shu Jin's rough face showed a lazy smile. Yuan Lingdu said coldly, "Do you need to ask?" Shu Jin revealed his snow-white teeth and said, "I gave you face but you don't want it. Then don't blame me for being impolite." Yuan Lingdu's face darkened and he said angrily, "Who do you think you are? Come on, catch this ungrateful guy." Before Yuan Lingdu's voice fell, Shu Jin grabbed Yuan Lingdu's neck and lifted him in the air. Clap, clap, clap. Almost at the same time, a series of slaps were slapped on Yuan Lingdu's face. His teeth were peeled off, his cheeks were red and swollen, and he screamed like a pig. The crowd gathered in front of the governor's mansion couldn't help but gasp in horror. Who was this guy? How could he be so arrogant? Some people in the crowd had sharp eyes, and they were even more shocked. Yuan Lingdu was a famous master in the city lord's mansion, but at this time, he was like a little lamb without the strength to truss a chicken. He had no strength to struggle at all. Didn't this mean that the majestic man was an extremely terrifying master? Some guards of the governor's mansion rushed up, but before they could get close, they were thrown out by an invisible force and fell to the ground. For a while, the governor's mansion was in a mess. "I have killed many trash like you. This time, I will spare your life for Lu Wujuan's sake." Shu Jin threw Yuan Lingdu out like throwing garbage. He made such a big noise, but he swaggered towards the governor's mansion as if nothing had happened. Behind him, there was shock and chaos. Who the hell is this guy? How dare he break into the governor's mansion? I heard that he came to get the province test certificate for Lin Sun. Damn, I just thought this guy was an errand boy. I never thought he was so powerful. That's weird. How can Governor Lu Wujuan let it go after making such a big noise? That's for sure. If he doesn't pay the price, I'm afraid it will be difficult to get the province test certificate out of the governor's mansion smoothly. Now there will be a good show. Chapter 293. In the council hall of the governor's mansion, Lu Wujuan, Wei Lingzhen, Du Dongtu and other big shots were present. Below them stood a group of practitioners who had passed the province test. All of them looked solemn and dared not make any noise. The atmosphere was very dull. Lu Wujuan and other big shots more or less showed a trace of displeasure, and those practitioners were even more impatient and gloomy. They were waiting for Lin Sun. But until now there was still no trace of Lin Sun, which made them all a little unhappy. According to the practice, when the certificate of province test was issued, the first one would be given to the winner of the province test, and then the others would follow in turn. This was not only a practice, but also a set of rules, which reflected the importance the empire attached to the selected practitioners. Similarly, it was also the glory of every practitioner. Therefore, if Lin Sun, the first in the province test, didn't come, this set of rules could not be started, so all the people in the hall could only wait there. Lin Sun is too lazy. He didn't show up for such an important thing. Is the certificate of province test so unimportant in his mind? Some big shots couldn't bear it and spoke in a deep voice, expressing their dissatisfaction. It's understandable that he is a maverick in the province test. After all, he is a young man. It's understandable that he is proud of his talent. But now the result of the province test has come out, and we are waiting here for him alone. This is a little too much. When he comes, I won't give him a good look. Yes, not only can't give him a good look, but also we should teach him a good lesson and let him remember it. This is also for the sake of his future. Suddenly, some other big shots also spoke one after another, expressing strong dissatisfaction with Lin Sun. Hearing the words of these big shots, the practitioners who had passed the province test in the hall were all refreshed. They gloated in their hearts and waited to see Lin Sun's good show. They were also full of anger. They were eager for those big shots to teach Lin Sun a lesson and make him suffer. Don't be impatient, everyone. No matter what the reason is, Lin Sun's behavior is somewhat wrong. When he comes, he will be severely reprimanded. Governor Lu Wujuan said. At this moment, a guard suddenly ran in from outside the hall. He was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. Reporting to the governor, someone has trespassed into the city lord's mansion. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Trespassing into the city lord's estate at this time? Wasn't that courting death? Which of the bigwigs present here were pushovers? What happened? Lu Wujuan frowned. The man said that he came to get the certificate of province test on behalf of Lin Sun. After being refused by Lord Ruan, he fought with him. Before he finished, someone snorted with displeasure, Lin Sun is so ungrateful. It's fine that he didn't come, but he sent a madman to make trouble. He doesn't take us seriously at all. Other big shots also frowned. What was going on with Lin Sun? Those practitioners who had passed the assessment had widened their eyes in astonishment. Who dared to break into the governor's mansion? Did he think he could do whatever he wanted with the name of Lin Sun? Lu Wujuan couldn't help but feel a touch of anger in his heart. He suddenly stood up and said, I'd like to see which arrogant man dares to run wild in my territory. At this moment, a terrible power emerged from his body, which made the air in the hall suddenly solidified. But at this time, a rough and heroic laughter sounded outside the hall. Atonement, atonement. I've kept you waiting for a long time. With the voice, a majestic figure strode in. In a trance, people only felt that it was not a person, but a towering mountain that was moving horizontally, giving people a sense of suffocating oppression. All the practitioners in the hall trembled, their hair stood on end, and they felt cold all over. Even the faces of many big shots changed slightly. Their pupils shrank and they got up from their seat. Only a few people, such as Lu Wujuan and Wei Lingzhen, looked a little stunned at this time, with a look of disbelief. The majestic figure was naturally Shu Jin. He strode into the hall, glanced around, and his eyes fell on Lu Wujuan. He grinned and said, Lu Wufu, I haven't seen you for many years. You've become more and more powerful as a governor. How come it's you? Lu Wujuan's momentum suddenly converged, and he looked at Shu Jin with a somewhat complicated expression, like surprise, fear, and a trace of rejection. Why can't it be me? Shu Jin's momentum also converged, and he returned to his lazy appearance. At this time, people realized that the majestic man who suddenly broke in was actually an acquaintance of Governor Lu Wujuan. Lu Wujuan seemed to sigh helplessly and said, I haven't seen you for many years, but you're still like this. Let me guess, you're not here to fight with me again this time, are you? Everyone couldn't help but gasp. Governor Lu Wujuan was second to none in the Tao Insight realm in the southwestern province. From what he said, it was obvious that he had fought with the majestic man more than once before. Shu Jin laughed and said, "No, it's boring to fight. It's not as interesting as killing some bastards of the Dark Clan. I'm here to help Lin Sun get the certificate of province test this time." All the people present finally came to their senses. It turned out that the man in front of them was the arrogant man who made trouble just now. For a while, many people's faces changed, and they couldn't believe it. They just thought that Lin Sun didn't know what was good for him. He didn't come himself, but sent a man to get the certificate of province test, and this man broke into the governor's mansion without saying a word. It was extremely arrogant. Whoever thought that the servant Lin Sun sent was a powerful master? Even Lu Wujuan couldn't help but be stunned. After a while, he sighed and said, "No wonder. I should have guessed it, but I didn't expect it to be you." Shu Jin smiled and didn't say much. Immediately, Lu Wujuan no longer hesitated. He handed the certificate of province test to Shu Jin and said, "Take it away." "Thank you. I'll have a drink with you later." Shu Jin said, glanced around and smiled. "Everyone, I'm a rough man and I don't know any etiquette. If I offended you just now, please forgive me. Well, I don't want to waste your time. I'll leave first." After that, he turned around and left without looking back. Lu Wujuan didn't ask him to stay. He watched Shu Jin leave, and then turned back to his seat. He frowned and murmured, "Is this guy really willing to stay there? In the Battle of Tsang Mountain at dusk, I heard that he was seriously injured and left. Since then, he hasn't shown up. I never thought that he." Wei Lingjin also sighed, as if he remembered some past events. Seeing this, other big shots couldn't help but wonder. They were confused and couldn't help asking, "What's the origin of that man just now?" Those practitioners in the hall were also curious. Lu Wujuan thought for a moment and only transmitted his voice to those big shots. "Let's not talk about his origin. You just need to know that more than a dozen powerful forces in the city received Heyao's invitation a few days ago, and it should be related to him. A man of Heiyao Shrine." In an instant, those big shots made a keen judgment. They couldn't help but feel shocked and their expressions became complicated. Lin Sun actually asked a master of Heiyao Shrine to help him get the certificate of province test. What was the relationship between Lin Sun and Heiyao Shrine? Although those practitioners who passed the province test didn't hear the sound transmission, they witnessed the scene just now. How could they not understand that the majestic man was also a great man? When they thought that Lin Sun could ask such a big shot to run errands, they couldn't help but feel excited and couldn't calm down for a long time. At this time, Ruan Lingdu staggered into the hall. His cheeks were red and swollen like a pig's head, and his hair was disheveled. He looked extremely miserable. He cried unwillingly, "Your Excellency, why did you let the murderer go?" Suddenly, the eyes of many people in the field became strange. This guy was obviously beaten by Shu Jin, and he didn't understand the situation. How pitiful! Ruan Lingdu was originally angry, but when he saw everyone's strange expression, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He couldn't help but stutter, "Your Excellency, is that man just now?" Lu Wujuan nodded his head. Ruan Lingdu suddenly felt like being struck by lightning. He was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. This time, he not only offended the person who couldn't be offended, but also lost his face. And all this was related to the damn Lin Sun. If Chu Feng knew that Shu Jin inadvertently helped him to teach Ruan Lingdu a lesson, he would be very happy. And if Lin Sun knew that Ruan Lingdu put all the blame on him because of this matter, he would also cry that he was wronged. But then again, even if Lin Sun knew all this, he wouldn't care about it at all. He was going to leave Mist City soon. How could he pay attention to these things? On the second day when Shu Jin brought back the certificate of province test, Lin Sun, who had been staying in the room playing with gadgets, finally walked out of the room. He had packed his luggage and was ready to set off for the Forbidden City, the capital of the empire. Outside the city gate. "Old Jean, I don't know when we can meet again. But no matter what, if you encounter any difficult things in the future, if I can help you, be sure to come to me. Lin Sun said seriously. Shu Jin said disdainfully, Get out of here. When you have the power to defeat me, you can say these words. Lin Sun said angrily, This is a farewell. Can we be serious and solemn? Shu Jin grunted and said, I can't. Lin Sun had no choice but to roll his eyes and turn his head directly to the distance. Boy, if you die, I won't avenge you, so don't die. Shu Jin's lazy shout came from behind, which made Lin Sun's face stagnate. He waved his hand angrily. Don't worry, I won't die in front of you, so you have to be careful not to die in front of me. Shu Jin laughed loudly. Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared on the distant horizon, Shu Jin stopped smiling, took out a bottle of wine, raised his head and drank it up. Finally, he exhaled a long breath of wine. A man is full of strength, a fierce spirit rushing out of his heart, and death is like sleeping. Boy, see you later. Murmuring vague words in his mouth, Shu Jin strode drunkenly. He didn't return to Mist City. His task had been completed, so he naturally had to leave. P.S. This volume is finally finished. It's really hard to bury the clues and lay out the plot in the last few chapters. Fortunately, it's finally finished,